Excitement rippled through the air as word spread. Gao Chenyu, the school's top genius, was about to confess his feelings to Ye Lin, the breathtaking campus goddess. Qin Tian, seemingly lost in thought, glanced down at his phone as a group of people gathered nearby. He abruptly declared he was going home. Someone scrolls through a video titled, Solo. Wilderness. A helicopter flies over a landscape, eliciting excited comments. A bald man reacts dramatically to the video, seemingly impressed. Someone signs off, promising to see their viewers again soon. Qin Tian stretched luxuriously. Qin Tian seemed to hear something and looked puzzled. A terrifying storm raged, lightning illuminating the tumultuous sea as a large ship was tossed about. A cruise ship is violently tossed by stormy seas as an urgent announcement blares, warning passengers to evacuate the deck immediately. As a massive wave crashes over the deck, someone yells for the students to run to the cabins. Panic erupts as everyone scrambles for safety. A sudden storm quickly approaches, alarming Qin Tian. He curses, a flicker of fear in his eyes as he thinks about the Titanic. Caught in the downpour, he realized it was too late to turn back to the cabin. Someone's foot landed heavily on a wooden surface. Someone urgently yells at Qin Tian to get back to the cabin, but he's already bolting out. He leaps over a startled bystander with green hair, his expression determined. The guy in the background is also shocked by Qin Tian's sudden escape. A bouquet of red roses is dramatically kicked aside as someone walks away. Someone confidently declared, "Not even close," while reaching for a large red object. A large yacht is rocked by a powerful wave in stormy seas. Lightning flashes across the dark, rainy sky as the vessel begins to capsize. A massive object crashes into the turbulent ocean. Qin Tian woke up on a sandy beach, looking surprised and confused. Qin Tian washed ashore, relieved to have survived. He found himself on a beautiful, sunny beach. Washed ashore, Qin Tian realized he'd survived the shipwreck thanks to a lifebuoy. The island appeared deserted, devoid of any human presence. Rescue teams wouldn't arrive for 5 days unless someone reported them missing. Qin Tian clenched his fists, his expression grim as he considered the situation. Stranded on a deserted island, Qin Tian realized he might have to survive for 6 days before rescue arrived. But then, something caught his eye. Qin Tian realized with relief that the island had plenty of coconut trees, ensuring his survival for at least a week. A small pile of coconuts lay before him. Qin Tian, with a sly grin, skillfully cuts into a fruit with a knife, musing that his impulsive purchase is proving surprisingly useful on the island. Qin Tian, sipping from a coconut, realized it was too old and wouldn't provide enough hydration. He calculated he'd need at least 5 coconuts a day to survive on the island. Waking up on the beach, the dark-haired man recalled hearing something about a system while unconscious. Qin Tian spit something out with a disgusted "Peft." He looked shocked and a little grossed out. Qin Tian, intrigued, encountered a holographic projection, seemingly a newbie pack, and wondered what it contained. He tapped it curiously. Qin Tian was awarded the Common Plants and Common Animals books, but he's outraged, thinking they're useless newbie gifts. Qin Tian sarcastically wondered who would read on a deserted island, then fantasized about the popularity of a game with such a powerful newbie system. Suddenly a notification popped up. Gift packs were being distributed. He reacted with wide-eyed surprise. Qin Tian gasped, a strange energy swirling around him. Qin Tian triumphantly received a newbie gift package, letting out a relieved and excited laugh. Qin Tian touched his head, puzzled, as he felt a surge of unfamiliar knowledge flooding his mind. He focused, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple, his eye widening with dawning realization. He examined 2 coconuts, a holographic display providing detailed botanical information about them. He realized with excitement that the system-sent book could be directly uploaded to his mind. He yelled in elation. Qin Tian seemed to have a sudden realization amidst the tropical foliage, a spark of an idea flashing in his eyes as he gestured thoughtfully. Qin Tian, with a look of intense focus, wondered if he was alone on the island. Someone is running through the jungle. Footsteps echo loudly. It seems urgent. A foot stomped down, raising a cloud of dust. Qin Tian, eyes sharp, lunged forward, fists clenched. He seemed determined and ready for a fight. Qin Tian, seemingly alarmed, noticed something. Ye Lin, startled, reacted with surprise to his sudden movement. A pink-haired girl, presumably Ye Lin, lies on a sandy beach. A dark, sinuous shape slithers dangerously close to her bare feet. Someone recognizes the girl as campus goddess Ye Lin. Qin Tian spun around, startled by a sudden sound. He noticed something slithering nearby. He seemed to be running away from something. A venomous snake appeared, its description flashing across the scene. Someone with pink hair enters the frame, seemingly unaware of the danger lurking nearby. Ye Lin, with a terrified expression, cried out for help. A menacing snake lunged, hissing, as a hand reached out. With a powerful whoosh, someone pulled back on a thick, dark cord. Qin Tian bravely fends off a snake, protecting a frightened Ye Lin. Qin Tian swiftly snatched a venomous snake, warning Ye Lin that its bite could cause serious, possibly crippling injuries. Startled and unsure, Ye Lin looked up at her rescuer, asking who he was. Qin Tian turned away from Ye Lin, urging her to get dressed first. A blush crept up her face as she realized her current state of undress. Ye Lin gasped, her eyes wide with surprise. A girl, likely Ye Lin based on the context, shrieked, desperately telling someone to close their eyes and not look. Flustered, the pink-haired girl realized her plan to dry her clothes in the woods had gone terribly wrong. She's mortified by the unexpected encounter. Ye-lin, the pink-haired girl, seemed hesitant, her hand resting against a tree. Ye-lin observed Qin Tian from a distance, a thoughtful expression on her face as she realized he had saved her and seemed like a genuinely good person. Ye-lin was upset that the black-haired boy left so abruptly, without even glancing at her. She wondered aloud if she was unattractive. Then, in a separate scene, she politely thanked someone, introducing herself as Ye-lin. The pink-haired girl, Ye-lin, shyly tells Qin Tian that she's a university student. She then asked him if he was a student too, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Qin Tian and Ye-lin clasped hands in shocked recognition, realizing they were both shipwreck survivors and schoolmates. Ye-lin gulped down the coconut water, exclaiming at its sour taste but desperate to quench her thirst. Observing her, Qin Tian mused that she seemed to need more water than him. On a sunny beach, the pink-haired girl sipped from a coconut, a contented smile on her face, as the dark-haired guy expertly prepared more. Qin Tian desperately asked Ye-lin if she had any means of communication, like a phone or radio. Shaking her head, Ye-lin sadly replied that she lost everything when she washed ashore. Qin Tian, lost in thought, touches his chin, realizing the gravity of his situation mirrors that of many others. He reassures himself, despite the devastating cruise ship accident and immense loss of life, help is surely on its way. Ye-lin, the pink-haired girl, declared with determined optimism that as long as they stayed put, rescue was still possible. Qin Tian was impressed by Ye-lin's optimism, though he found it unrealistic given their dire situation. He worried aloud about the long wait for rescue, doubting their ability to survive for so long stranded on a deserted island. He began to express another concern. Qin Tian seems to be dismissing someone's idea. He thinks rescuers might already be searching, but just in case, he suggests building a fire to ward off bugs and snakes. Ye-lin is clearly terrified by something. Ye-lin, startled by a hissing sound, insists someone prepare a bonfire for safety. Qin Tian, concerned, reaffirms the need for the fire. The pink-haired girl wondered how they could start a fire like they do on TV. Qin Tian explained that drilling wood for fire takes skill and time, unlikely for beginners. He then suggested searching the beach for lighters or other useful items, washed ashore from the cruise ship. Ye-lin agreed enthusiastically. An hour passed and the pink-haired girl was getting frustrated. The beach was spotless and her search yielded nothing. Qin Tian, gazing thoughtfully at the pristine beach, agrees with Ye-lin that it's suspiciously clean for a deserted island. He muses that their graduation trip shouldn't have taken them too far inland, so there should be some signs of life, even on a deserted island. Qin Tian surveyed the desolate beach, finding only sand and driftwood, no sign of civilization. Ye-lin, noticing a glint in the sand, pointed it out in curiosity. Ye-lin, digging in the sand, unearthed a plastic bottle, her initial excitement quickly fading into disappointment. Qin Tian, looking thoughtful, wondered aloud if the usual method was the only way to start a fire. Discouraged, Ye-lin tossed the bottle aside. Ye-lin, the pink-haired girl, paused, a confused expression on her face as Qin Tian suddenly called out to her to wait. Ye-lin, puzzled, questioned Qin Tian about the value of a simple plastic bottle he was holding. He gave a knowing smirk and hinted that she'd soon understand its usefulness. Her expression brightened with anticipation as she realized the bottle's potential. Qin Tian confidently assured Ye-lin they could make fire. He knelt, carefully arranging kindling, while she watched with a thoughtful expression. A dark-haired man contemplates a disturbing statistic. Over 300,000 forest fires occur annually, mostly caused by humans. He continues his grim reflection, noting that improperly managed open fires contribute significantly to the human-caused blazes. A plastic bottle magnifies the sun's rays, igniting a pile of dry leaves and sticks. The dry tinder catches fire, quickly sending up a plume of smoke. A fire accidentally started by littering of plastic bottles. Qin Tian cleverly uses a water bottle to start a fire, impressing the pink-haired Ye-lin. He explains how the bottle acts like a magnifying glass. She watches in amazement as the leaves catch fire. He looks pleased with his ingenuity. Qin Tian successfully started a fire, bringing warmth and hope to the stranded pair. Ye-lin, watching nearby, at a tropical beach at night. Stranded on a deserted beach, Qin Tian and Ye-lin sat by a crackling fire, their faces lit by the flickering flames. Ye-lin worried aloud about rescue and the possibility of starving. Qin Tian noticed Ye-lin's optimism fading after their unsuccessful search. He thought she seemed frustrated. He reminded himself that staying positive was crucial for survival on the island. Qin Tian knew he needed to comfort Ye-lin. He reassured her that rescue would arrive within a week, tops. He pointed out the abundance of coconuts, assuring her survival even if they only drank coconut milk. By the firelight, the pink-haired girl questions the dark-haired young man. He assures her, but privately admits he might be stretching the truth to keep her calm. Qin Tian, holding a knife and some rope, playfully asked Ye-lin to guess what he was going to do. He then swiftly whipped something out, creating a blur of motion. A dark snake lunged, its eyes burning with predatory intent. Someone swiftly sliced the snake's tail with a sharp blade. Ye-lin, worried, asked Qin Tian what he was doing with the fire. He confirmed her suspicion. He intended to cook whatever he was holding. Qin Tian seems pleased they have found food. Lin is absolutely horrified at the prospect of eating snake, dramatically declaring she'd rather drown. Qin Tian pierced a piece of food, seemingly unimpressed with someone's pickiness. He mused that any food was a blessing on a deserted island, wondering why she was complaining. A smirk played on his lips as he confidently predicted she'd cave and eat eventually. Qin Tian cooked some snake meat over a fire. He took a bite and happily declared it perfectly cooked, crispy outside, tender inside. Lin also seemed to enjoy the surprisingly tasty meal. Qin Tian and Lin sat by a crackling fire on the beach. He asked her to turn around. She looked reluctant, but curious. Something good is happening. Qin Tian savored a delicious skewer, eyes closed in pure bliss. A playfully disgruntled humph suggested someone nearby wasn't as impressed. Qin Tian is startled by Lin's sudden intense expression. He stammers, asking her what's wrong. Qin Tian reached for something cooking over the fire, a mischievous glint in his eye. Lin, startled, quickly offered it to him, nervously asking if he had a problem. He smirked and took it while she anxiously pleaded with him. The pink-haired girl savored a skewer, her eyes closed in bliss. Someone asked her if it smelled good, and she happily confirmed. Qin Tian, relieved, thought to himself that his system's ability to identify the red cyanonatrix was crucial for their survival. Qin Tian, enjoying his cooked food, realized the mysterious system assisting him had shut down unexpectedly. He earned 100 points for building a fire. Qin Tian suddenly recoiled from a holographic display, startling the pink-haired Lin. He quickly brushed it off, claiming a bug had flown down his shirt. He looked away, flustered, trying to hide his embarrassment. Qin Tian coughed, covering his mouth with a gloved hand, wondering aloud if he was the only one who could see the system. Lin, startled, confessed that his strange behavior had made her fear they were in danger. Stranded on a deserted island, Lin nervously clutched a makeshift fire starter, hoping for rescue. She confided in Qin Tian, expressing her uncertainty about him, given they'd only known each other a short time. Qin Tian pondered Lin's character, realizing he knew little about her. His mind raced, fearing she might expose his secret system. The gravity of the situation hit him. He could end up a research subject. He hardened his resolve, determined to keep the system hidden from Lin. Qin Tian realized he could freely use the system now that Lin couldn't see it. He started navigating the interface while she ate, seemingly oblivious. A system notification beeped, informing the dark-haired guy he'd earned 100 points for building a bonfire. He learned that gathering survival items on the deserted island would earn him more points, redeemable for supplies in a system store. Qin Tian discovered a game-like store interface in his mind, stocked with items and 100 points. He marveled at how easy it was to use, like a familiar video game. A beep resonated as the store materialized, making him wonder if it was all a mental construct. Qin Tian browsed a holographic menu, considering survival skills, traps, and even mysterious items with a thoughtful expression. He seemed intrigued by the options and their potential uses on the island. He found a scroll on a futuristic interface. Curious, he tapped it, wondering aloud what it could be. He hesitated, a thoughtful escaping his lips. Qin Tian, blushing, held up a blurred book titled Wild Sex Positions, muttering about how amazing it seemed despite the blur. Qin Tian scrolls through something on a transparent screen, a smug look on his face. Qin Tian, browsing a digital store, was shocked by the high prices. 2,000 points minimum. With his meager 100 points, he couldn't afford a thing. Frustrated, he realized the task module, his only hope for earning more points, was also empty. Qin Tian, enjoying a skewer by the fire, realized he wasn't sure how to earn points in this strange new world. A mysterious interface scrolled before him, prompting him to explore the island. Under a crescent moon, someone realized that coconuts alone won't cut it. They need protein. Qin Tian and Lin relaxed by a small fire on the beach. Someone suggested they split up at low tide the next day to scavenge for seafood along the shore. Qin Tian seemed a little surprised by the proposal. Qin Tian seems to be nudging a sleeping Lin, telling her to get up. Lin drifted off to sleep, completely unguarded, leaving Qin Tian utterly bewildered by her trust. Under the crescent moon, he decided to postpone a difficult conversation until the next day. Under a crescent moon, a rustling sound broke the silence of the night. Someone woke up, startled by the noise. Qin Tian jolted awake. He suddenly felt a chill and wondered what was happening. He shivered, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden temperature drop. Qin Tian brushed some sand off his arms. Seemingly frustrated, he noticed Lin shivering and cursed under his breath, worried. Qin Tian frantically tries to wake up an unconscious Lin. He shakes her gently, calling her name with worry etched on his face. He panicked, realizing the pink-haired girl was icy cold and unresponsive due to exhaustion. She stirred slightly, a soft sound escaping her lips. He looked up, seemingly alerted by something in the night. Qin Tian was relieved that Lin had only gone into shock from the cold. Suddenly, he did something that startled her and she yelped. Scared, startled, The pink-haired girl recoiled, urging Qin Tian to step back. Qin Tian stammered, trying to explain himself, but Ye Lin, face flushed, accused him of being a dirty person. He looked bewildered, trying to ask her something, while she angrily reminded him they were alone on the island. Qin Tian asked Ye Lin to turn around, leaving her confused. She seemed hesitant, unsure of what he was planning. He playfully warned her that if she didn't turn, there might be consequences. She reluctantly complied, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension in her eyes. Ye Lin, looking down at Qin Tian by the fire, suggested he come closer to warm up. He seemed puzzled, wondering if she felt cold herself. A disgusted noise escaped her lips as she reacted with visible discomfort. Ye Lin shivered, feeling a sudden chill. A gust of wind swept through. Qin Tian and Ye Lin shivered, huddled around a small fire on the cold beach. He remarked how strangely large the temperature difference was between day and night. He was even more surprised that it defied common sense. Qin Tian realized they were in trouble. Being near the equator, they hadn't packed for the unexpected cold. Suddenly shivering, he called out to Ye Lin, who was also visibly cold. Qin Tian, worried about the plummeting temperature, suggested to Ye Lin they huddle together for warmth to survive the night. Her reaction was pure shock and disbelief. With crossed arms and a determined look, the pink-haired girl firmly refuses something, exclaiming it'll only happen in his dreams. Huddled near a crackling fire on the cold beach, Qin Tian shivered, the warmth not quite reaching his chilled limbs. Shivering, Ye Lin wondered if she really had to hold Qin Tian to survive the night. A blush crept onto her face as she realized she'd never been so close to a man before. Qin Tian shivered, his breath misting in the cold air, clearly feeling the chill. He realized how crucial Qin Tian had been to their survival, specifically mentioning the fire. Qin Tian looked confused as Ye Lin told him to stand up. Blushing, she demanded he close his eyes and not look. Flustered and hesitant, the pink-haired girl seems to be considering taking something off. Qin Tian's eyes widened, a mischievous grin spreading across his face as he questioned the pink-haired girl about removing her dress. The scene shifts to a cozy sleeping arrangement, where a woman cuddles up to a sleeping man under a blanket, radiating warmth and intimacy. Flustered, the pink-haired girl reacted to a suggestion about how TV drama characters deal with the cold. Qin Tian reassured someone that thick clothes weren't necessary in their current situation. He reassured her their thin clothes were enough. She seemed to understand. Then, with a blush, he told her he was going to hold her, making her cheeks flush even brighter. Qin Tian and Ye Lin sat by the fire. She seemingly agreed to something. Suddenly, a gloved hand grabbed Ye Lin's shoulder. Qin Tian held Ye Lin tightly, urging her to hold on as she gasped in surprise. Someone found the water surprisingly warm. The waves gently lapped against the shore. The waves gently lapped against the sandy shore. The ocean sparkled under the warm glow of the setting sun. Someone was swimming in the vibrant blue water. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, seemed to be deep in thought, a thoughtful, escaping her lips as she looked at Qin Tian with an intense gaze. Ye Lin excitedly calls out to Qin Tian, urging him to look at something. Ye Lin joyfully greets the dawn, exclaiming about the daybreak. Qin Tian watched as Ye Lin stepped onto what seemed to be a wooden plank. A clear blue sky stretched above them. Someone is captivated by the breathtaking beauty of the ocean and sunset view. On a deserted beach, Qin Tian and Ye Lin walked away from a small fire, their paths diverging. The tide was coming in. Qin Tian raced across the beach, urging someone not to let the stranded seafood escape back into the water. Ye Lin, startled, watched him run by. Someone cried out in pain. A rocky landscape is shown. Ye Lin, in distress, cries out to Qin Tian for help as a crab pinches her hand. Someone shouts advice to hit the crab with rocks, and Qin Tian quickly reaches for one. A crab was swiftly crushed with a rock. Someone seemed to have hurt their hand. Qin Tian rushed to the scene. Qin Tian, holding a sheet overflowing with crabs, proudly declared they had a seafood feast for breakfast. Ye Lin, cradling a small crab, looked delighted with their abundant catch. Qin Tian expertly stabs a crab. Ye Lin, surprised, asks him why he discarded the shell, pointing out there's still meat inside. Ye Lin complained about being hungry after a meager snake dinner and lamented throwing away a perfectly good crab shell. Qin Tian offered her some crab meat, but warned her there wasn't much to share. Qin Tian protested about the small portion of crabs he received. Ye Lin, with a slightly worried expression, explained that too much crab meat could upset his stomach. Qin Tian warned Ye Lin against eating the crab shell due to potential stomach upset. Ye Lin, smelling the cooked crab, wished for some sauces. Realizing the dangers of sleeping on the beach, Qin Tian suggested building a camp in the forest for protection from the cold wind. Qin Tian and Ye Lin enjoyed a meal cooked over a makeshift fire on the beach. She asked him if they were headed to the forest next. He confirmed they were. Qin Tian urgently reminded Ye Lin of the dangerously cold night they just endured, implying they could die if they stayed on the beach again. Ye Lin, confused, questioned his insistence on the forest. Pointing out the beach seemed fine for camping, the pink-haired girl excitedly pointed out the abundance of resources in the nearby forest, suggesting they could find both shelter and food. Qin Tian readily agreed to her plan. The pink-haired girl wondered if they should leave after eating. The dark-haired young man, Qin Tian, suggested they prioritize gathering fresh water first. He also emphasized the need to leave a distress signal to ensure they're found by rescuers. Ye Lin, worried, pointed out that the coconut tree was too tall and dangerous to climb. Qin Tian, with a sly grin, suggested that he should climb it instead. A beat of silence hung in the air, as Qin Tian's suggestion was met with a look of disbelief. From Ye Lin, he explained that they needed more water, and the fallen coconuts weren't enough. She gasped, alarmed by his actions. He seemed to be preparing something. He confidently demonstrated a unique tree climbing technique using a rope, explaining he learned it on TV. He detailed how the footlocking method uses rope tension for increased friction against the tree trunk. Qin Tian strained as he climbed the coconut tree, Ye Lin watching anxiously from below. He cleverly used a rope to secure his footing. Climbing proved to be even more difficult than he anticipated. Qin Tian, knife clenched between his teeth, struggled with a smooth tree trunk. Realizing it was more difficult than he anticipated, he breathed a sigh of relief, having narrowly avoided injury. He had finally made it. Qin Tian, high up in a palm tree, told Ye Lin to go away. Surprised, she simply agreed. With swift, precise movements, someone expertly cuts down several coconuts. Satisfied with their haul, they declare they've gathered more than enough. On a sunny beach, the pink-haired girl savored a coconut, while the dark-haired guy carefully poured fresh water into a bottle, a subtle smile playing on his lips. Qin Tian raved about the fresh coconut milk, noting it was way better than older coconuts. Ye Lin, struggling with a pile of coconuts, was urged by him to drop the heavy load. He questioned throwing away the precious fresh water they'd worked so hard to obtain. She agreed, but warned him about the side effects of too much coconut milk, vomiting, and diarrhea. She teasingly asked if he really wanted to risk those issues in the wilderness, surrounded by creepy crawlies and other dangers. He looked concerned as she spoke. Qin Tian and Ye Lin stood at the edge of a lush tropical forest, a sense of uncertainty hanging in the air. He seemed hesitant, as if contemplating their next move. A desperate SOS message spelled out with stones lies on a sandy beach. The scene shifts to a lush tropical island, hinting at survivors nearby. Someone was captivated by a survival show and wished they could experience it themselves. They seemed to be with a pink-haired girl, possibly on a beach, judging by the inflatable ring near them. The rustling sound suggests they're surrounded by foliage. Exhausted, Qin Tian just yearned for the comfort of his bed and a long, peaceful sleep. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, nervously confessed to Qin Tian that she felt unseen eyes watching them from the shadows. He offered her a bottle of water, seemingly unconcerned. Qin Tian offered Ye Lin a drink. He held the bottle as she drank thirstily. He told her not to touch the bottle with her lips. Ye Lin offered Qin Tian some water, and he seemed surprised. He agreed and took a long drink as someone asked him what he was searching for. Qin Tian takes a refreshing gulp of water. He questions Ye Lin's curiosity. He looks at her, a little perplexed. She seems to be waiting for an answer, her expression thoughtful. Ye Lin noticed Qin Tian was searching for something. A snake slithered nearby, causing a hiss. He confirmed he remembered yesterday's snake. Qin Tian identified it as a red sinatrix, a freshwater snake that sometimes hunts on land. Ye Lin excitedly asks Qin Tian if he's found fresh water. He confirms her hopes with a playful bingo, but teases her that there's no reward. The pink-haired girl expressed concern, wondering how the guy with the bottle of water could possibly know where to find fresh water in such a vast forest, hoping he wasn't just blindly guessing. Qin Tian stressed that survival on the island depended on knowledge, not luck. He pointed out a barely visible path to Ye Lin. He explained that closer inspection revealed broken bushes and other signs of passage. Qin Tian, noticing a break in the foliage, deduced it might be an animal trail. Ye Lin, initially puzzled, quickly grasped his reasoning. Animals, like humans, need water, so the path probably leads to a source. Qin Tian complimented Ye Lin's intelligence. She playfully suspected his compliment wasn't genuine. Qin Tian brushed off Ye Lin's concern about his wilderness knowledge. Intrigued, she wondered aloud if he was some kind of outdoor expert. He responded with a cryptic question, leaving her even more curious. Qin Tian, carrying supplies, looked bewildered as a voice called out to him. He jokingly replied that he could be considered an outdoorsman despite a lack of actual experience. A close-up of his face showed a sudden shift to serious concern, as he realized something unsettling about their surroundings. Qin Tian, sweating slightly, realized the forest was much larger than he'd anticipated and worried about finding water soon. Ye Lin, noticing his concern, asked what was wrong. Yeah, Lin, the pink-haired girl, asks Qin Tian if he heard something. Qin Tian's eyes widened slightly, a spark of alarm or intrigue flashing across his face. He wonders aloud what the source of the sounds could be, his expression a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Qin Tian, pulling Ye Lin's hand, urgently leads her through the foliage. He seems to know where he's going. She looks surprised, following him trustingly. Qin Tian seemed surprised by something. He realized something important about the situation. Qin Tian and Ye Lin stumbled upon a pristine stream, the gentle gurgling of water filling the air. With a gurgling sound, a fresh water stream was discovered, bringing immense relief to the castaways. Qin Tian and Ye Lin, thrilled by a recent discovery, walked through a lush green area, their excitement palpable. Relieved, Qin Tian splashes some of the fresh water on his face, grateful they found a source before noon, ensuring enough daylight to build a fire. Qin Tian dipped his head into the clear stream, presumably for a refreshing drink. Ye Lin, her pink hair vibrant against the soft light, watched him with a pensive expression. She seemed lost in thought, perhaps contemplating something he'd said or done. The pink-haired girl, Ye-lin, cupped shimmering water in her hands. Someone warned her about drinking untreated water. Looking slightly surprised, Ye-lin revealed she knew about the risks. Qin Tian, sweating, explained he couldn't drink the river water because of bacteria. Trying to calm him, Ye-lin reminded him there was no need to be so upset. Footsteps rustled through the grass as she approached. She questioned his choice of campsite, wondering why they wouldn't set up closer to the river. Qin Tian cautiously entered the lush forest, a life preserver slung over his shoulder, while Ye-lin looked on with a hint of concern. He explained that camping too close to water could be dangerous, attracting wild animals or leading to flooding if it rained. Qin Tian announced their arrival at a promising spot, flat, with tall trees, few shrubs, and close to the water. He seemed pleased with their find. Qin Tian and Ye-lin found a temporary shelter. He took charge of building a fire and finding wood for their camp, handing her a knife. He asked her to gather large leaves or shrub branches, and she readily agreed. Qin Tian realized the wood was too damp to burn because of the humid forest air. Qin Tian decided to dry some wood for future use, just in case finding dry wood becomes difficult later. He then checked the sunlight and estimated the time to be around 2 p.m. He carefully placed a water bottle near a small fire he had built. Qin Tian, realizing he's short on time, decides to build a simple ramp-style camp. He recalls a spot with thin trees perfect for his needs and lets out a sigh of relief. Qin Tian, tending a small fire, realized his dagger was useless for felling trees. Suddenly, his face brightened. An idea struck. Qin Tian, examining a rock, recalled a survival show where someone made a sharp tool by striking stones together and then attaching a sharpened stone to a stick. Qin Tian crafts a simple stone axe, ready to face the challenges of the island. A large rock slammed down with a resounding bang. Qin Tian, looking pleased, remarked that this one was good. Qin Tian, examining a sharp rock, realized he was in a dire situation and needed a quicker solution than crafting a stone axe. The lush, dense forest loomed around him. Qin Tian forcefully broke a branch with a bam. He seems to have something on his mind. Qin Tian, sweating, complained about the difficulty of cutting down trees with a stone. Relieved, he noted that he only needed one large tree and would collect smaller ones later. A vibrant sunset filled the sky above the lush green island. Qin Tian, sweat dripping, realized he'd only felled 9 trees all afternoon and needed to hurry back to camp before nightfall. Qin Tian hefted a heavy log, estimating its weight. He explained his surprising strength by mentioning his summer job hauling sugarcane on his father's farm. Qin Tian, carrying a large bundle of wood, trudged back to camp, thinking his earlier efforts were wasted. Ye-lin, her pink hair vibrant against the forest backdrop, excitedly greeted his return. Ye-lin walked through the jungle, seemingly searching for something amongst the foliage and rocks. Ye-lin excitedly presents a large armful of plantain leaves to a surprised Qin Tian, who wonders where she found so many. Qin Tian excitedly told Ye-lin about a plantain field he found, but the trees were too tall to reach the top leaves. Reassuringly, Ye-lin pointed out the collected leaves were enough for a shelter. Eagerly, Qin Tian asked when they should begin building. Racing against the setting sun and limited supplies, Qin Tian and Ye-lin urgently began constructing a makeshift shelter for the freezing night ahead. He noticed the surprising strength of the tree bark they were using as rope. Qin Tian diligently tied wooden poles together, building a makeshift shelter. A diagram explained the simple structure of a ramp-type camp. He seemed to ponder the next step in the construction process. Ye-lin, holding a large leaf, wondered if they should secure it with bark. Qin Tian, ever resourceful, suggested a simpler solution, cutting a hole in the leaf's stem to attach it to the frame. With swift, precise movements, he expertly sharpened a thick branch into a sturdy stake. He then drove the sharpened stake forcefully into the ground. A loud thud echoed through the forest, startling the pink-haired girl. The black-haired man quickly secured some large leaves to a wooden frame. He seemed to be building some sort of shelter. The girl watched him, a mixture of surprise and curiosity on her face. He realized he needed to create an inclined plane using the windbreak and a stake. Ye-lin, with a slightly worried expression, wondered aloud if this was their new camp. Ye-lin wondered about the seemingly flimsy shelter with only one wall. Qin Tian assured her it was strategically designed to reflect the bonfire's warmth effectively. With a triumphant beep, Qin Tian successfully built a basic camp, earning himself a cool 1,000 points. Ye-lin looked apprehensive, arms crossed, as Qin Tian gestured towards a glowing display reading 1100, clearly worried about what might happen next. Qin Tian sweats, a mischievous grin spreading across his face as he imagines the warmth. He laughs, amused and slightly exasperated at the system's apparent teasing. He can't believe he's being mocked by a disembodied voice. A plastic bottle, rigged over a small fire, steamed gently, prompting a worried question about the safety of the water inside. A gruff voice retorted, daring the worrier to skip the water if they were so concerned about dehydration. Qin Tian gestured gestured to Ye-lin, reminding her to save some food. She guzzled water from a bottle near the fire, he thought to himself, relieved she hadn't touched the bottle opening with her lips. Safe and warm in their newly built camp, Qin Tian seemed restless. Ye-lin offered him water, but his mind was already on their next challenge, finding food on the deserted island. As night fell and insects buzzed around them, the urgency of their situation became even clearer. Their current food supply was limited to coconuts and seafood. Unfortunately, both were found only on the beach. Suddenly, the pink-haired girl was startled by buzzing insects, flailing her arms in alarm. Qin Tian explains to Ye-lin that their camp is too far from the beach to catch the morning tide. He worries aloud that coconuts alone won't sustain them. Determined, he decides to investigate the plantain field Ye-lin had spoken of. Qin Tian wondered if they could find plantains. Suddenly, he felt a buzz and reacted with surprise as something seemed to have startled him. A loud, jarring sound, then erupted, indicating something unexpected and potentially dangerous had occurred. A loud slap echoes. Something or someone was definitely hit hard. Qin Tian, startled, looked at his arm with a strange mark. Ye-lin, noticing his reaction, asked him what he was doing. Qin Tian quickly reassures Ye-lin that he didn't mean to do whatever just happened. She points out a mosquito, swatting at the buzzing insects around her, realizing there are quite a few. Qin Tian, sweating, realized the deep forest mosquitoes were vicious. He worried about the bites becoming infected. He knew he needed to act fast to avoid getting sick. A startled Ye-lin cries for Qin Tian's help, swatting at something unseen. He looks up at her, seemingly just waking up. Qin Tian whistled, startling Ye-lin, who was relaxing by the fire in their makeshift shelter. Ye-lin gasps, seemingly startled by something above her. Qin Tian whistles, a smug look on his face as he gathers some plants, thinking he's quite the charmer. Someone throws leaves onto a fire, threatening to suffocate everyone with the smoke. A gentle breeze rustled through, large leaves drying on a makeshift rack. Qin Tian reassured Ye-lin that the smoke would repel mosquitoes. Intrigued, Ye-lin questioned him about a strange sound he'd made earlier and how it seemed to attract the insects. He simply replied it was an old trick he'd learned. Under the crescent moon, leaves rustled in the wind. Huddled near a makeshift windbreak, he felt the slight warmth. Though the night air still held a chill he could just about tolerate, even if he didn't quite understand the science behind it. Qin Tian, warming his hands by a small fire, was pleased with his decision to camp in the forest's shelter. Aware of the forest's dangers, the dark-haired guy suggested they take turns keeping watch. Exhausted, the pink-haired girl dozed off, even while sitting upright. Someone noticed and realized she must have been up all night and busy all day. Qin Tian noticed Ye-lin collapse, exhausted from a long day. He realized he'd have to stay alert and keep watch through the night. Qin Tian, finding himself with nothing to do on a Long Island night, decides to make some rope, figuring it'll be useful later. Someone mentioned bark first. A bright yellow bird chirps melodiously on a branch. Waking up early, the pink-haired girl stretched cheerfully under the shelter. Noticing her, the dark-haired guy commented on how early she was up. Ye-lin, holding some rope, wondered aloud to Qin Tian where he'd gotten it and if he'd made it himself. He cryptically warned her to stay on watch that night, or he'd do something bad to her, leaving her startled. Qin Tian seems to have startled Ye-lin, and she lets out a surprised gasp. He quickly apologizes, blaming his actions on being overly tired the night before. Ye-lin insisted Qin Tian get a good night's sleep while she kept watch. Qin Tian, arms crossed, suggested they take turns, doubting her ability to stay awake. He playfully teased her about falling asleep while sitting. Qin Tian wondered aloud where the plantain field was, as Ye-lin knelt by the water's edge. Yesterday was spent securing water and setting up camp, leaving no time to explore the surrounding area for other resources. A gurgling stream hints at nearby water. Ye-lin pointed towards the river, assuring someone that their destination was close by, just a short distance downriver. An exclamation mark hinted at a sudden realization or surprise from an unseen character. He excitedly showed her a plant, rattling off a detailed description of a raspberry, its growing habits and health benefits. She curiously peered at the plant, wondering what it was and if it was edible. He called out to Ye-lin, eager to share his discovery. Qin Tian, intrigued, asked Ye-lin how she knew the berries were safe to eat. With a playful smirk, she teased him, implying his own excitement gave it away. Qin Tian offered Ye-lin some raspberries, encouraging her to try them. She curiously accepted, agreeing to give the fruit a taste. The pink-haired girl, Ye-lin, scrunched up her face, exclaiming that something was extremely sour. Qin Tian, her dark-haired companion, responded with a skeptical, "Oh really?" Ye-lin makes a sour face, clearly not enjoying the taste of the berries. Qin Tian casually tosses another berry in the air, explaining that raspberries aren't ripe yet, so the sour taste is to be expected. Someone identifies a large edible plant, similar to a banana, as a plantain. They express relief at their fortunate find. Qin Tian spotted some plantains, suggesting they have them for breakfast. Ye-lin worried they looked unripe and might be bitter. Qin Tian admitted he didn't know, but they had no other options. Ye-lin wondered how they would reach the high-hanging plantains. Qin Tian considered climbing, but jokingly worried about the tree's ability to support him. Qin Tian is focused, tying a knot in some rope. Someone asks him what he's up to. With a swoosh, he pulls down a bunch of bananas from a tall tree. With a determined grunt, Qin Tian reached for a sturdy vine, swinging it expertly around a thick ayar branch high above. With a determined go, Qin Tian lunged forward. A makeshift tool flew through the air, striking a bunch of bananas with a satisfying bam! With a determined grunt, Qin Tian pulled hard on a rope, urging someone to come down. With a cracking sound, Qin Tian pulled down a bunch of bananas, startling Ye Lin. Suddenly, there's a loud thud as something crashes through the jungle foliage. Ye Lin was relieved the leaves were soft. Worried, she checked on Qin Tian, asking if he was all right and hungry. He offered her a banana. She, suspicious and annoyed, refused, convinced he wanted her to test it for poison. Qin Tian peeled a banana, a little dejectedly, muttering about how he tried to be chivalrous but Ye Lin misunderstood him. Ye Lin looked skeptical, arms crossed, unconvinced by something. Qin Tian struggled with a seemingly tough banana, exclaiming about its hardness. He then wondered aloud if the fruit was unripe, looking to Ye Lin for confirmation. Ye Lin suggested they save the strange banana, but Qin Tian looked disturbed, covering his mouth and insisting it wasn't food. He urged her to take a closer look, clearly worried. The narrator explains that cultivated bananas have lost their seeds, but wild plantains still have them even when ripe, making them inedible. Qin Tian sighed, what a pity, as Ye Lin tossed away a plantain. He declared plantains weren't tasty enough, and suggested they hunt for some meat instead. Ye Lin, surprised, questions Qin Tian about something he found. He casually explains that it grows on plantain trees. Her shock deepens as she can't believe what she's hearing. Qin Tian, holding large leaves, promises a reveal, saying they'll know later. Someone dramatically presented a leaf holding a worm, announcing it as the meat they'd mentioned. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, seemed surprisingly unfazed, curiously eyeing the worm and wondering if it was edible. Qin Tian, observing her calm reaction, found it rather odd. Qin Tian, holding a large plantain leaf, explains that the plantain worms inside are packed with protein. He suggests breading and frying them for a delicious snack. Someone mentions a snack being best for children. The scene shifts to the camp. Grubs sizzled over a fire, making someone hungry and impatient. One asked if the meal was ready, but the other told them to wait just a moment. Qin Tian, with a triumphant grin, proudly held up a pair of makeshift chopsticks, announcing their completion. The pink-haired girl savored a bite, her eyes widening in delight at the unexpected crab-like flavor. The dark-haired boy beside her, though seemingly pleased, expressed a hint of regret at the lack of oil. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, happily declared plantain worms tastier than snake meat, letting out a satisfied burp. Qin Tian, slightly surprised by her enthusiasm, continued preparing their meager supplies. Qin Tian casually remarked that hunger makes everything taste good. He then playfully teased Ye Lin, expressing surprise that she hadn't objected to eating plantain worms. Someone mentions trying fried insects with a friend. Qin Tian asks Ye Lin to bring him some bark rope. Ye Lin happily agrees. Qin Tian, holding a cut plastic bottle and a knife, looks surprised. Ye Lin is furious that he broke a bottle. He did something he had to for the sake of a fishing trap. The pink-haired girl looks utterly perplexed at the mention of a fishing trap. Qin Tian confidently shows off a makeshift fish trap, explaining he saw plenty of fish in the river earlier and is sure they can catch some with it. Ye Lin, pointing at a plastic bottle, seemed surprised and asked Qin Tian if he really meant that. He simply confirmed with a confident, yeah, a fish swims easily into a wide-mouthed trap. Uh-oh, the fish is trying to swim out the narrow end and is now stuck. Qin Tian, holding a water container, cryptically warns Ye Lin that something is easy to get into, but hard to escape. Ye Lin, her pink hair cascading, seems unsure about the situation, murmuring hesitantly. Qin Tian earned 200 points for crafting a simple fish trap. He seemed displeased despite the gain. Then, disaster struck. They lost their water container. Qin Tian swipes a coconut shell towards Ye Lin, suggesting it might be useful. Ye Lin wonders if it could hold water, worried about it burning over a fire. Qin Tian, with a sly grin, clarified that they weren't warming the water directly. He explained his ingenious plan to boil water using hot stones in a coconut shell. Someone agreed, suggesting indirect heat transfer as another option. Qin Tian, holding a makeshift fishing trap, suggests a trip to the beach. Ye Lin, sitting on the grass, agrees, but reminds him they need to set up their fishing gear first. A clever trick is employed. A small hole in a bottle lets water fill it completely. A stone weighs down a fishing trap, keeping it steady in the current. Leftover plantain worms are seen inside the bottle, presumably bait for the trap. Ye Lin, puzzled, questioned Qin Tian about their remote fishing spot, wondering why they didn't just set the trap near their camp. The pink-haired girl suggested setting a fish trap in a shady, weedy spot, perfect for hiding fish. Suddenly, she paused, sniffing the air and asking her companion if he smelled anything unusual. He seemed confused, questioning what she meant. Qin Tian, alerted by Ye Lin, sniffs the air thoughtfully, recognizing a familiar scent. Qin Tian suddenly stopped and called out to Ye Lin, who seemed to be walking ahead of him. He looked surprised, almost as if she was leaving him behind. Ye Lin, with her long pink hair, barely turned back, seemingly unfazed by his plea. The air grew thick with a mysterious scent. Suddenly, the pink-haired girl excitedly pointed, urging, Qin Tian to look. Qin Tian excitedly pointed out a patch of mint, a welcome find on their deserted island. He quickly explained its properties and usual growing locations to Yelin. Potted mint can help repel mosquitoes, though it's not a foolproof solution. Qin Tian, knife in hand, had a brilliant idea, transplanting mint around their camp to ward off mosquitoes. Much to Yelin's surprised delight. Excitedly, the pink-haired girl suggests they dig up a lot of whatever they found, tossing some aside. The dark-haired guy, slightly bewildered, holds some more of the same plant. Qin Tian, arms full of leafy greens, decided they had enough and suggested heading back to plant them. Yelin, holding her own bundle of greens, readily agreed. Yelin carefully tended to some small plants near their makeshift shelter. Qin Tian hammered something into the ground nearby, making a loud bam. Someone carefully plants a small sprig, covering the roots with soil. The pink-haired girl wonders aloud if the mint they found will keep the mosquitoes away. The guy with her expresses his relief at finding the mint, clearly not expecting such good luck on the deserted island. Qin Tian urges Yelin to rest, promising they'll get coconuts later. A surprised Yelin looks at him thoughtfully as he turns away. Yelin simply agreed. Qin Tian, crafting a stone axe, triggered a system notification and earned 200 points, surprised to receive another reward so soon. Qin Tian, holding a crudely made axe, realized he'd earned points again. He wondered if crafting survival tools would also earn him points. Qin Tian confirms something with a confident smile. He remarks that buying supplies won't be a problem. Yelin observes him, slightly bewildered by his over-the-top joy at crafting a basic stone axe. Qin Tian, with a mischievous grin, was busy crafting something. Yelin, the pink-haired beauty, looked surprised. Suddenly she spun around, bewildered, wondering who could have done this. Qin Tian proudly presented a pile of coconuts to Yelin, exhausted but pleased with his efforts. He dramatically emphasized how hard he'd worked to gather them. Qin Tian and Yelin discovered something unusual on the beach, and she wondered if another person was stranded there too. Someone, possibly Qin Tian, was shocked by a closer inspection of the discovery. Examining a broken object, he realized it wasn't human handiwork. The pink-haired girl worriedly wondered if it was a wild animal like a lion or tiger. He quickly dismissed the idea, pointing out the obvious predatory nature of such creatures. Yelin innocently asked Qin Tian if he'd heard of any beasts that eat coconuts. He looked surprised for a moment, then clarified that while beasts don't, some creatures do, leaving an intriguing air of mystery. Yelin, her eyes wide, wondered aloud if they were talking about a coconut crab. Qin Tian confirmed her suspicion and pointed out some tracks in the sand, believing them to be left by the very same crustacean. Qin Tian notices a trail left by coconut crabs. Yelin wonders if they can find the crabs by following the trail. Qin Tian and Yelin followed a trail of footprints along the beach, but suddenly the tracks disappeared, leaving them stranded and unsure of their next move. Yelin wondered aloud why they couldn't find any coconut crabs. Qin Tian, looking upwards, cryptically told her to look up. A coconut crab, a huge hermit crab capable of tearing open coconuts, is spotted high in a palm tree. Someone excitedly exclaims they've found it. Qin Tian marveled at the massive coconut crab, estimating its weight. Yelin looked on in awe, clearly impressed. He scooped up the hefty crustacean, and they headed off to continue their island adventure. Qin Tian and Yelin spotted something they could eat. Yelin excitedly suggested they take it, but wondered how to reach it since it was out of reach. Yelin excitedly alerted Qin Tian that something was coming down from the tree. He calmly responded, telling her there's no need to rush. A large crab scuttled down the tree trunk, causing some confusion. Qin Tian urged Yelin to hurry as something seemed to be rising again, likely the tide. He offered her a coconut while gently pulling her away from whatever danger was approaching. Qin Tian, with a cunning glint in his eyes, assures someone that their target can't escape. He's determined to get payback for his stolen coconuts. Yelin, looking surprised, reacts to the situation. Yelin, recoiling slightly, accuses Qin Tian of looking evil. The pink-haired girl marveled at a coconut crab's effortless cracking of a coconut. The crab peeled it open with surprising speed. Someone nearby exclaimed in awe at the crab's impressive feat. Qin Tian froze, startled, as a giant insect suddenly appeared before him. Qin Tian expertly cracked open a coconut, earning a surprised compliment, then urged someone to go ahead and try it as a crab scuttled nearby. A coconut crab, unusually active during daylight, cracked open a coconut, defying its nocturnal nature, leaving someone bewildered by the island's peculiarities. Impressed, Yelin complimented Qin Tian on his swift coconut opening skills. Someone swiftly snatched a coconut right out from under a large crab. The crab, clearly not amused, paused in stunned silence. Then, it erupted in a furious outburst, cursing the coconut thief. A giant crab scuttled away, looking distressed. Qin Tian, holding coconuts, playfully challenged Yelin to a chase. She watched him, seemingly amused. Yelin just realized Qin Tian spared the crab because he wanted free labor! Qin Tian, with a mischievous grin, holds up a pair of coconut halves, teasing someone about stealing his coconuts. He seems to have the upper hand in a playful situation, clearly enjoying his little victory. Qin Tian, holding a large, bound crustacean, hurried along, leaving a pink-haired girl struggling to keep pace. Annoyed, she called out to him, pleading for him to slow down. A small girl with light hair muttered about how mean he was being. Qin Tian warned her it was getting dark and told her to hold on. Ye Lin, struggling under the weight of the coconuts, complained she couldn't walk any further. Qin Tian, seeing her exhaustion, suggested they take a short break. Qin Tian returned, carrying supplies, while Yelin seemed surprised, her hand resting on a large piece of wood. Qin Tian looked thoughtfully at the receding tide, lamenting the approaching darkness that would cut short their search for seafood. He realized with a start that they'd already been stranded for 3 days. Alone on the beach, the pink-haired girl worriedly wondered if rescuers had given up on them. Qin Tian, carrying a netted crab, called out to the pink-haired Yelin, a hint of concern in his voice. Yelin recoiled, blushing, with a resounding, "No!" Qin Tian, stunned, reacted with surprise. Qin Tian was sure the rescue team wouldn't abandon them. Yelin, radiating hope, agreed, pointing out that his earlier prediction about being found within a week seemed to be coming true. Qin Tian, noticing the late hour, urged Ye Lin to head back quickly. Qin Tian, lost in thought, realized 3 days had already slipped by. Suddenly, Ye Lin's excited voice broke through his contemplation, urging him to look at something. Qin Tian proudly showed off their successful fishing haul to Ye Lin, surprised by the abundance of fish in the river. Ye Lin, holding a small woven container, wished they could catch more fish, but their bottle was too small. Qin Tian, ever thoughtful, urged her to rest at their camp while he prepared their catch. Resourcefully, he realized the banana worm Zy used as bait were gone, eaten by a fish, so he decided to use the fish guts as new bait. Qin Tian explained the benefits of using traps. They're efficient and reusable. He waded into the shallows of a stream to check a trap, seemingly pleased with the results. A pile of freshly caught fish lay on the bank, ready to be prepared. Nearby, Ye Lin watched him with anticipation. Ye Lin, giggling, proudly presents her fishing haul. A notification pops up informing Qin Tian he's earned 500 points for completing the fishing task. He reacts with surprise at the unexpected reward. Qin Tian, seemingly surprised, realized he'd completed a task. A notification beeped, and a calculating look crossed his face as he wondered if his 2,000 points were enough for some shopping in the system store. Back at camp, Qin Tian returned with his bounty of fish and gathered supplies, only to be met with a curious question about a mysterious stone structure being built. Qin Tian is building a bigger stove because the coconut crab is huge. Ye Lin is relieved they have the crab because the 3 fish wouldn't have been enough food. Qin Tian worriedly explains to Ye Lin that their fish trap isn't providing enough food. A juicy crab sizzles over the fire. Someone raves about how delicious the coconut crab is. Ye Lin, delighted, savored a piece of crab, noting a hint of coconut. Qin Tian, equally impressed, realized the crab was meatier than he expected. Ye Lin, full and satisfied, announced she was going to sleep and playfully reminded Qin Tian to wake her for her shift. Qin Tian, already dozing off face down on a makeshift bed, gave a sleepy thumbs up. Under a crescent moon, leaves rustled ominously in the dark forest. Someone hoped they wouldn't encounter anything too wild. Ye Lin gripped a makeshift hammer, her face a mask of nervous anticipation as she sensed someone approaching. She trembled slightly, beads of sweat forming on her brow, bracing herself for whatever, or whoever, was coming. Someone patted the pink-haired girl's shoulder. She gasped in surprise. Angrily, she told the person to get lost and stay away. Qin Tian startled Ye Lin, nearly hitting her with stone axes. She realized it was him and scolded him playfully for scaring her. Confused, he wondered why she was awake so early. By the flickering firelight, the dark-haired young man urged the pink-haired girl to sleep, assuring her he'd keep watch. Later, her wide-eyed expression revealed surprise, as she was gently asked if she'd rested enough. The pink-haired girl offered to stay on watch, mentioning she'd slept well. The dark-haired guy looked amused, recalling a previous incident involving an axe and sleep deprivation. He agreed with something she said. Later, under the makeshift shelter, he watched her sleep peacefully. Qin Tian, tending the fire, thought about how he could spend his hard-earned 2,000 points later. Under a crescent moon, a rustling sound echoed through the night sky. Another rustle followed, deeper and closer, suggesting something was moving nearby. Smoke curled lazily from a makeshift shelter, hinting at recent activity. A sizzling sound indicated someone was busy preparing a meal. Someone stirs a bowl with chopsticks, a leaf, and dark stone visible within the cloudy liquid. Qin Tian sighs, observing the murky water, noting that the ashes on the heated stone affected its clarity. Qin Tian carefully examined the water collected in a container. He seemed relieved, thinking as long as it's boiled, it's safe to drink. Qin Tian, chewing on some mint, felt himself becoming more alert. Suddenly, someone announced their arrival at a new location. Qin Tian was startled by Ye Lin while she slept soundly on a makeshift bed of leaves. He realized she was just talking in her sleep. In a dream, Ye Lin murmured that she knew he would come. Ye Lin, the pink-haired girl, sobs quietly, curled up. Qin Tian realizes he misjudged her strength, seeing her vulnerability. He reflects that her optimism might have been a brave facade masking deep sorrow, a fragile shell forcibly created. Ye Lin, overwhelmed by the shipwreck, is in denial, struggling to cope with the trauma. Qin Tian, observing her fragile state. Voices his growing despair. No rescue is in sight, and he fears they've been abandoned. Ye Lin is clinging to the hope that rescuers will arrive within a week. Qin Tian is taking off his shirt, seemingly preparing for something. Qin Tian worried about Ye Lin, fearing she'd lose hope if rescue didn't arrive soon. He pushed those thoughts aside, deciding to focus on a more immediate problem, finding food. He decided to check what supplies he could get with his points. Qin Tian looked at the sleeping Ye Lin, then at a holographic display. He realized the essential survival guides cost a hefty 2,000 points each. He pondered which guide to buy first. He realized the survival guides were incredibly useful, but his points only allowed for one. Frustration twisted his features. He wanted them all. Stranded and needing tools, he realizes his productivity is low. He spots a promising book about crafting tools and decides to select it. Qin Tian, focused and determined, prepared to summon an item, a strange energy swirling around him. A beeping sound filled the air as the energy intensified, and he urged the process on with anticipation. Qin Tian realized the book he found was incredibly helpful, containing instructions for essential survival crafts. Someone was shown making pottery, while another crafted a recurve bow and arrows. A third person was busy making paper, and Qin Tian, looking stressed but determined, seemed to be overseeing the whole operation. Qin Tian confidently declared he could survive on the island if he could craft everything in a certain book. Suddenly, a spinning lottery wheel appeared, catching his attention. He wondered what it was and how it worked. Qin Tian just made his first purchase and won a free spin. He's feeling incredibly lucky and ready to try his chances. Qin Tian, buzzing with excitement, recounts his incredibly lucky day. He caught a coconut crab, finished a fishing task, and now has a shot at a 1,000-point lottery wheel. The lottery wheel, glowing bright blue, presents him with various animal-themed prize options. Confidently, the dark-haired man realized the wheel held no losing spaces. He urged for luck as he prepared to spin. With a determined tap, someone activates a futuristic spinning wheel offering various survival skills as prizes. The wheel whirs and beeps dramatically. A futuristic interface beeped, displaying the gift of the fastest cheetah speed, eliciting an awestruck "awesome" from someone unseen. Qin Tian, staring at a glowing blue object, realized he'd stumbled upon something incredibly valuable. A beep sounded, and a prompt asked him if he wanted to try it out immediately. Qin Tian, puzzled, stared at something labeled "Experience." A card with a creature's image popped up, giving him the option to use it or keep it. He cursed in surprise. Qin Tian, looking disappointed, realized getting the gift wasn't going to be easy. He grumbled about the stingy system, comparing it to a Kijin game. Someone taps a glowing blue button labeled Experience card, a beep echoing. Deciding against another option, they think free is always best. Birds chirped as a new day dawned on the island. Ye Lin, rubbing sleep from her eyes, greeted Qin Tian. She seemed surprised he was already awake. Ye Lin leans over someone lying down, clearly worried. She calls out Qin Tian's name, wondering where he is. She continues to search, her voice laced with concern. Ye Lin, the pink-haired girl, looked bewildered and flustered, clutching her chest near a makeshift campfire. Qin Tian, carrying a string of fish, turned as Ye Lin woke up, excitedly calling his name. Ye Lin, slightly annoyed, asked Qin Tian to let her know before he leaves next time. He teased her, wondering if she was afraid he'd abandon her. After a short pause, he relented and agreed to tell her next time, as they cooked fish over a crackling fire. Qin Tian told Ye Lin he was stepping out for a bit and warned her to stay away from the river until his return. Qin Tian gives Ye Lin some strangely specific instructions about burying something and not polluting the water. A confused and slightly irritated Ye Lin insists she's just going for a bath. Qin Tian sits by the fire, seemingly teasing Ye Lin about something. He realizes she's been acting strangely and figures out why. They haven't bathed since arriving on the island. He understands her embarrassment about bringing it up given their busy and precarious situation. Ye Lin huffed, seemingly annoyed, but trying to be patient. Qin Tian sniffed a fish he was holding, realizing he hadn't bathed in days and wondering if he should. Qin Tian, realizing they were out of food, decided to prioritize finding something to eat. He then told someone, presumably Ye Lin, that he was going scouting for resources and reminded her to call him after she finished bathing. Qin Tian seemed to be explaining something, gesturing with his hand. Ye Lin, with a determined expression, declared she understood. Sunlight streamed through the leaves of the lush trees. Qin Tian, resourceful as ever, discovered some peculiar hoof-shaped fungi growing on a tree. He carefully cut them down with his knife, realizing they were tinder polypore, perfect for starting a fire. Someone else's hand then reached out and inspected a piece of the unusual fungus, likely contemplating its usefulness. Qin Tian, feeling lucky, found something useful shortly after venturing out. His discovery triggered the idea of searching for mushrooms for food. Qin Tian, seemingly pleased, noted the abundance of resources around their camp, particularly the fruit trees he'd spotted earlier. He confidently added that with the system's help, he wouldn't need to worry about poisonous mushrooms. Qin Tian examined some unfamiliar berries, frustrated he couldn't identify them. Suddenly, he heard a rustling in the bushes nearby. Qin Tian spotted something in the bushes. He realized it was a hare, and alerted someone nearby. The hare darted away through the foliage. The person who he called, who wasn't Yelin, seemed surprised by its sudden appearance. Qin Tian, carrying a makeshift hammer, spots a hare and realizes it's too fast to catch. He realized the odds of hitting his target with the axe were incredibly low. A startled rabbit darted away as several primitive bolas whirled past. Someone seemed to have a plan. Qin Tian hatched a clever plan to catch a rabbit by distracting it with a thrown axe. The axe thudded into the ground, startling the rabbit. He pounced, hoping to seize his dinner. A fierce kick sends something flying through the air. Qin Tian, face strained with effort and determination, grits out a warning. "Don't even think about it." A small animal darted through the lush forest. Qin Tian watched it, a playful glint in his eyes, and muttered a challenge. He lunged, attempting to catch the creature. Qin Tian bolted, a burst of motion and color as he dashed through vibrant green grass. He skidded to a halt, face planting, a bewildered expression plastered across his face as he wondered if he'd just seen Bugs Bunny. Qin Tian dusted off his hands, wondering if Yelin was done with her bath. Qin Tian decided it was time to return and discuss the day's mission with Yelin. He paused, a look of sudden realization crossing his face. He wondered which way back to camp was. Trekking through the dense foliage, Qin Tian realized how lucky he was that the morning dew had marked his path. Qin Tian paced impatiently, wondering why Yelin's bath was taking so long. He worriedly glances around their makeshift camp. Qin Tian gasped, his eyes widening as he recognized a familiar pink-haired figure in the distance. It was Yelin. He seemed both surprised and excited. A bright flash of light momentarily obscured the view as he reacted to her presence. Qin Tian rushed towards Yelin, his voice filled with worry as he asked if she was all right. Terror filled Yelin's eyes as she spotted a snake slithering towards her in the water. She cried out for help, her voice laced with panic. Qin Tian leaps into the water after Yelin, who gasps in surprise. He reaches out to her. He plunges into the sea. With a surge of adrenaline, someone lunges, grabbing a piece of driftwood from the vibrant turquoise water. Qin Tian, holding a wriggling eel, reassured a startled Yelin that it wasn't a snake. Someone found a snake-like creature and wondered if it was a rice field eel. The discoverer confirmed it was indeed a rice field eel, edible but a skilled burrower. A burrowing sound startled the pink-haired girl, Yelin, and she yelled for it to go away. Qin Tian, with a playful smirk, agreed to leave her alone. Qin Tian, holding a snake, decided to wait for Yelin, worried something might happen to her again. Qin Tian, relieved, holds up an eel, declaring their food problem solved. He then seems to have a second thought about the eel. Yelin marveled at something impressively large, wondering if the island's pristine nature was the cause. Suddenly, a wave of embarrassment washed over her as she worried about being seen undressed. She quickly began to cover herself. Qin Tian, holding a snake, turned back to seemingly ask Yelin if she was finished. Flustered and dripping, the pink-haired girl seemed to confirm something. Suddenly self-conscious, she questioned why she was being stared at. The pink-haired girl noticed Qin Tian's gaze and asked why he was staring. He stammered, clearly flustered by being caught. Qin Tian, blushing slightly, cleared his throat, captivated by someone's beauty. Yelin suddenly looked startled and flustered. She announced she was heading back to camp. A glimpse of her pink hair could be seen disappearing into the trees. Yelin walks away from Qin Tian, leaving him holding a length of rope. He calls out, teasing her about being tired of all the attention she got back at school. She pauses, seemingly lost in thought. Qin Tian, holding a snake, looks at a flustered Yelin. She wonders aloud why she feels happy from his simple words. Embarrassed, she admits she didn't expect such a reaction. Qin Tian wore a subtle, knowing smirk, clearly amused by something someone just said. Qin Tian, taking off his shirt, muses about the solitary nature of rice field eels. With a cunning grin, the dark-haired man declared he'd catch all the eels in the area. Qin Tian, by the water's edge, carefully examined the soft earth, hoping to find burrows. He spotted it, an eel's nest. He understood how they worked. 2 holes, one top, one bottom. Someone confirmed they'd got it. Another person explained the nature of rice field eel nests. Qin Tian held up a handful of dirt, explaining that the lower layer was closer to the water source. He then added that the upper layer was best for ventilation. Qin Tian cunningly blocked one of the holes, forcing his prey towards the other. He realized he couldn't just grab the creature, as other things live near the water. Qin Tian, examining some leaves, added that even water snakes were on the menu. Qin Tian learned a curious fact about water snakes. They love caves, but can't dig them, so they steal them, especially from rice field eels. He seemed to be thoughtfully braiding some long grass. He recalled a close call from high school when he mistook a harmless water snake for an eel while fishing. He shuddered dramatically, realizing how close he'd come to a very unpleasant end if it had been venomous. Summer's the best time to catch rice field eels. It's their mating season. Pregnant eels create foam to help their eggs float and grow. An eel slips into the water. Qin Tian, determined, lowers a rope into a dark hole, suspecting something lurks within. He's unsure if it's an eel or a snake, as it's not summer yet when they're easier to spot. He listens intently, the rope taut in his hand. Something twitches below, and he pulls the rope back slowly. He devised a clever trap using water plants. hoping to catch an eel, but prepared to roast whatever emerged, even a snake. Suddenly, something bit into the rope, causing it to tighten ominously. Qin Tian excitedly realizes he's caught a rice field eel. Qin Tian, with a determined look, yelled, "Come out!" while pulling a vine, seemingly trying to unearth something hidden. He triumphantly landed on the wooden platform. Someone asked in amazement if he'd caught 2 more eels. Ye Lin, hopeful, clasped her hands together, wondering if their food problems were over. Qin Tian, carrying tools, turned slightly, downplaying her excitement, and explained his limited findings near the water. Qin Tian realized there were only 3 eels in their small water source. He marveled at their size, noting they must eat a lot more than regular eels. He seemed relieved they had even those 3 in such a limited space. Ye Lin wondered aloud if they should roast all the food now, but Qin Tian, busy building a structure of branches, seemed to have doubts they could eat it all. Qin Tian explained to Ye Lin his plan to smoke the meat for better preservation. Ye Lin, looking surprised, takes over the stick with something draped over it from him. Qin Tian carefully tends to a small fire, ensuring the meat smoking above. It cures properly. He thinks about the lengthy process required to preserve meat in this way. Someone realized that smoking the meat for 3 to 4 hours would be sufficient, since it only needs to be preserved for a couple of days. Qin Tian looks at Ye Lin questioningly, wondering if he could help her with anything. He seems slightly surprised by her request, given the current situation. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, shyly confessed to Qin Tian that she felt a little useless watching him work so hard while she just sat around. Qin Tian offered to teach Ye Lin how to weave hemp ropes, making her responsible for all future rope making in the camp. He also mentioned plans to build a windbreaking wall the following day. Ye Lin readily agreed. Ye Lin, busily weaving something, told Qin Tian she's going to the river and asked him to prepare the stone stove for dinner. He readily agreed, turning his attention to a snake roasting over a fire. Qin Tian walks past a makeshift campfire. He reaches into the water and retrieves a fishing trap. He muses that he can catch 5 or 6 fish a day with this method. Qin Tian, holding a container with a small fish, realized it was barely enough food for one person. He suddenly felt something brush his leg underwater. He confidently explained their short-term food strategy, calculating that rationing the eel meat would allow their fish traps to replenish with even more fish within 2 days. Qin Tian, by a stream, feels relieved, securing food for himself and Ye Lin for a few days. He then realizes their current camp is vulnerable to spring rains. Qin Tian worried their current shelter wouldn't hold up in the rain. He decided to use their food surplus to improve the camp. He poured water, likely collected earlier, into something, perhaps a container for storage or use in construction. The sky darkened ominously, hinting at an approaching storm. An owl hooted in the dark night. Someone asked, "Are you done?" from below. Qin Tian cooked sausages over a crackling fire, while Ye Lin looked on excitedly. Qin Tian offered a bowl of something, saying he'd add some raspberries. He carefully placed a single perfect berry on top. Qin Tian expertly garnished a sizzling dish with vibrant red berries, a culinary masterpiece amidst their island survival. With a satisfied sigh, the pink-haired girl savored the last bite. The pink-haired girl savors a delicious mix of smoked meat and raspberries. She finds the unique texture of the eel particularly delightful, stimulating her taste buds with its sweet and sour flavor. Ye Lin savored a delicious morsel radiating pure delight. Qin Tian, amused by her enthusiasm, playfully questioned if she truly appreciated the irony of gourmet dining on a desert island. Qin Tian seemed deep in thought, touching his chin. Qin Tian, already damp from the heavy forest dew, realized his clothes were soaked despite only being out for a short while. Qin Tian, navigating through dense foliage, was relieved he'd left trail markers. He realized he'd be completely lost otherwise. Qin Tian touched a mark on a tree. He realized they were running low on food, having focused on improving their camp lately. Qin Tian, holding some kind of bait, carefully sets a trap, hoping for a hare. 2 days earlier, amidst the lush greenery of the island, someone demanded to know why the windshield had been torn down, their voice filled with urgency. Qin Tian, after gathering some branches, decided the windshield was too small and declared he'd build a bigger one. He then instructed Ye Lin to take over the current construction once she finished tying up the windbreak. Qin Tian was building some sort of frame, while Ye Lin watched, holding large leaves. Ye Lin simply agreed to something he'd said. Construction continued. Ye Lin, bundled up, happily announced their new shelter would keep them warm. The improved camp was noticeably larger, and thankfully, rain-proof. And there's even more. Good news about the new camp. The windshields created a safe and cozy space. Remembering which way the hare ran, he set off, determined to find its burrow. He realized the tinder he'd brought could still be burning. Qin Tian, feeling the pressure of time, strategized his hunting plan. He pondered the logic of a fox preying far from its den, questioning its necessity if food was readily available closer. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a voice urging him to hurry. A close-up on his face showed determination, tinged with a hint of anxiety, as the urgency of the situation sunk in. Qin Tian, noticing the lush vegetation, realized hares wouldn't stray far from their burrows. He deduced there must be a burrow nearby where they'd seen a hare. He looked determined, clutching something in his gloved hand. Qin Tian grumbled about the difficulty of finding the burrow. He scanned the forest floor. With a relieved sigh, he finally located it. Qin Tian examined a small burrow near a tree, seemingly deep in thought. He mused about the saying, "A wily hare has more than one burrow." His expression turned serious, hinting at a plan forming. Qin Tian realized there must be other exits to the hare's burrow. He figured he'd have to block them to smoke the hare. Out. Someone is rapidly placing rocks on the ground, blocking something. They continue to lay down rocks, creating a barrier. More rocks are added to the quickly growing wall, the action increasingly frantic. Someone blocked a burrow with a rock. He announced he'd found 5 burrows and blocked 3 of them. He looks pleased with his work, holding a rock. Qin Tian realized he only had 2 rabbit holes left to check. He figured he could smoke the rabbit out. He used Foam's Fomentarius as tinder, but it burned out too quickly. He blew into one of the holes, hoping to flush out a hare. Qin Tian, kneeling on the forest floor, realized he needed to be better equipped for his next foraging trip. Qin Tian patiently waited for a hare to emerge. Suddenly, a hare bolted out, startling him. Someone's hand reached out, preventing another person from escaping. "They declared there's no escape!" Qin Tian, holding a tiny hare, observed with slight surprise that it was just a baby. Qin Tian, startled, exclaimed as something zipped past him, darted down from above. Qin Tian's eyes widened in surprise. He seemed to be startled by the sudden movement. Qin Tian realized there's an even bigger one nearby. He wondered, since hares are solitary creatures, could this mean? Qin Tian dug into the earth. He looked up with a mischievous glint in his eye. Someone was right. 3 adorable baby hares huddled together, looking nervous. Half an hour passed quickly. Qin Tian, holding a pair of rabbits, seemed slightly disappointed that one got away. Qin Tian, holding several bound rabbits, looks pleased with himself. He declares it a good day, everything going according to plan. Qin Tian impressed everyone by catching all the hares. Someone was amazed by Yelin's rope-making skills. Someone asked Qin Tian if he caught all the rabbits. Qin Tian returned with a handful of freshly caught rabbits, while Yelin lovingly cuddled a small bunny. A close-up hints at Qin Tian's next move. Qin Tian, with a slight smirk, announced he was going to the river to prepare the hares. Yelin, shocked, exclaimed about their cuteness and questioned how he could eat them. Yelin held a snoring, grumpy-looking bunny, her eyes wide with surprise. Qin Tian realized he'd forgotten most women love cute creatures. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, had a disturbingly cheerful idea about fattening something up for meat. Someone off-panel reacted with shock. Qin Tian was taken aback, a single sweat drop trickling down his face, realizing Ye Lin wouldn't normally act this way. He mused to himself, however, that it was strategically sound to fatten them up to survive. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, cradled a small, furry creature, her expression a mix of sadness and resolve. She knew they had to make a difficult choice. For survival, she decided they'd eat the larger one and raise the smaller ones. Qin Tian meticulously prepared the hare, carefully draining its blood and removing glands to make it edible. He figured out a way to make the fish more palatable. Holding the hare skin, he noticed its rough texture compared to a rabbit's. He decided to keep the item, thinking it might come in handy later. Under a starry night sky, someone complained that the hare meat was stinky. Another person, seemingly offering a solution, told them to eat the roasted fish and give them the hare meat. Qin Tian and Ye Lin were by a campfire. She seemed displeased with the smoky aroma. He cautiously tasted something he cooked, a grimace twisting his face as he realized it still smelled terrible despite his efforts. Qin Tian seemed happy, and Ye Lin, curious about his joy, asked him to share the source of his amusement. Ye Lin happily eats, seemingly oblivious that tomorrow is the 7th day, their supposed last day on the island. It's revealed she's been secretly hoping for a rescue team all along. Qin Tian excitedly told Ye Lin they were leaving the island tomorrow. She happily confirmed she was ready. He realized he had a lot of preparations to make that night. Ye Lin, with a satisfied little burp, declared she was full. Qin Tian, observing her peculiar hand gestures, asked her what she was doing. Qin Tian, focused and resourceful, attempts to make fire by drilling wood. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, pointed excitedly at a small, carefully constructed bonfire. She confirmed with Qin Tian they were indeed building it together. Qin Tian agreed, adding that learning new skills is always valuable, especially in their situation. Qin Tian expertly notches a piece of wood, preparing to make fire. He mentions there are 5 ways to drill wood for fire, as shown in a wild crafts book. An illustration depicts the 2-man friction drill method. Someone demonstrates the bow drill method for making fire. Another person tries the hand drill technique. Then the fire plow method is shown. Finally, Qin Tian seems to be considering his options for fire starting. Qin Tian carefully considered fire starting methods, noting the Iroquois pump drill's higher success rate. He focused intently, using a bow drill to create a flame near Ye Lin, who watched with anticipation. Deciding to practice his archery, he vigorously twirled a stick, creating friction. Smoke began to rise as the stick rubbed against the wood, creating a spark of hope. Qin Tian vigorously rubbed 2 objects together, urging a fire to start, while Ye Lin watched with puzzled curiosity. Ye Lin, the pink-haired girl, looks relieved as Qin Tian returns, exclaiming that he made it. He sits by the newly made fire, seemingly exhausted but safe. The next morning, as they prepared to leave, Ye Lin suggested freeing the trapped hares. Qin Tian skeptically pointed out that the hares could easily chew through their wooden cage and were only subdued by their presence. Qin Tian decided he needed to lie to Yaelin, at least temporarily. Yaelin seemed pleased about something. She spun around, surprised by a sudden noise or perhaps someone's arrival. Qin Tian watched Yaelin wander off, seemingly lost in her own world, convinced rescue was imminent. An hour passed, marked by the quiet stillness of the island. Stranded on a sun-drenched beach, Yaelin shielded her eyes, scanning the horizon for any sign of rescue. Qin Tian, looking slightly concerned, admitted the rescue team was delayed. Yaelin, surprisingly calm, shrugged it off, used to the long wait. Agreeing with someone, the pink-haired girl settles down on the sandy beach to wait. Looks like Qin Tian and Yaelin are stranded on a beach for another night. He's getting ready to gather supplies, determined to make the best of it. She seems strangely cheerful about the situation. He realizes they'll need wood and coconuts to survive the night. The wind howled dramatically as something important seemed about to happen. It was the skill of drilling wood, apparently. Qin Tian, thinking about the fire he'd prepped, began diligently sawing wood as Yaelin watched. The saw creaked rhythmically as he worked. Yaelin shivered, impatiently wondering aloud to Qin Tian why the rescue was so late. A worried thought crossed her mind. Had she miscalculated? Tomorrow was supposed to be. It's day 7, and the pink-haired girl, Yaelin, is starting to worry, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and disbelief, wondering if they've been forgotten, or worse, abandoned. Qin Tian seemed troubled, whispering Yaelin's name with a worried expression. In a sudden move, one hand firmly grasped the other. Yaelin, tears streaming down her face, cries out in despair, fearing they're trapped and doomed. Qin Tian, looking shocked and distressed, holds her hands. Qin Tian tried to calm a distraught Yaelin. She desperately pleaded with him, tears welling in her eyes, hoping something terrible wouldn't happen. A close-up reveals her utter terror and disbelief. The pink-haired girl, Yaelin, looked shocked and distressed, exclaiming in disbelief. A resounding slap echoed, suggesting a sudden, dramatic confrontation. Qin Tian seemed to be explaining something important, gesturing with a slightly worried expression, while Yaelin listened intently. Yaelin cried out in pain, asking Qin Tian what he was doing. He gently suggested she just let it all out and have a good cry. He seemed to comfort her. Despair washed over her as she cried, convinced rescue would never come. She clung to him, sobbing. Qin Tian knelt beside the distressed pink-haired girl. He gently reassured her, saying it was all right even if whoever they were waiting for didn't arrive. He tenderly held her close as she sobbed, offering comfort and support. Qin Tian reassured Yaelin, letting her know he was there for her. Under a breathtaking starry sky, they stood together by a crackling fire, embraced in a comforting hug. Qin Tian sat alone by a small fire, lost in thought under the vast night sky. It's morning on the deserted island and slap something. Just got slapped. Hard. Qin Tian woke up confused, asking Yaelin why she'd slapped him the previous night. Qin Tian seemed to be starting a sentence. Yaelin playfully thanked him for last night, a mischievous glint in her eye. Qin Tian, bewildered, asked Yaelin why she had slapped him. Now that the truth was out in the open, Yaelin, with a sly grin, seemed almost pleased with his confusion. After a tense exchange, Yaelin declares they're even after they've slapped each other. Qin Tian, with a sly grin, pretends he didn't hear her and asks her to repeat what she said. Qin Tian wondered aloud why the tide hadn't gone out yet, puzzling the pink-haired girl beside him. Qin Tian and Yaelin sat together. She seemed a bit upset, while he looked contemplative with his arms crossed. Qin Tian explains to a surprised Yaelin that low tide isn't at a fixed time, but shifts by about 48 minutes each day, flicking his finger for emphasis. He calls out to someone off-panel. It's been 6 days since they were stranded, and the pink-haired girl Yaelin grumbled impatiently. Qin Tian, holding a melon, calculated they had about 5 hours until low tide. He suggested they wait before venturing out. Qin Tian expertly cracks open a coconut as Yaelin, a thoughtful expression on her face, calculates the tide's return. She wonders aloud if they'll have to wait until noon. Stranded on a deserted island after a week, Yaelin wondered aloud to Qin Tian when rescuers might find them. Qin Tian recalled reading something interesting. He wondered if Yaelin was ready to discuss it. He mused about a hypothetical scenario involving Yaelin and overflowing water levels, a curious analogy forming in his mind. The river flooded its banks last night. 2 years after a tragic accident, missing people will be declared dead. The pink-haired girl, seemingly worried, holds a bowl. A dam has been opened to manage the floodwaters. Someone reassured another, telling them not to overthink things. The black-haired young man explained that if they aren't found within a month, the rescue efforts will likely be scaled back. He seems relieved there's no risk of a cave-in. He smirked, thinking his actions the previous night were effective. Yaelin, the pink-haired girl, looks slightly annoyed, as if questioning someone's overly optimistic expectations. She then brushes it off, deciding it's not important after all. Qin Tian reassured Yaelin, suggesting they could build a boat and escape the island if things got really bad. He seemed thoughtful, perhaps pondering their situation more deeply. Qin Tian and Yaelin share a charged moment on the beach. He abruptly tells her to stop staring and go gather seafood since the tide is out. On a sunny beach, Qin Tian leaned towards Yaelin, who seemed upset and defensive, denying something. The scene shifted to their camp. Lush green leaves dry on a makeshift rack. A figure approaches a simple structure made of tied branches. A sudden spark ignites near the structure, suggesting someone is starting a fire. Qin Tian, relieved, found, their trapped hairs still secured in their makeshift cage. He was grateful for their timely return, imagining the little creatures escaping if they'd been any later. The hares huddled nervously within the enclosure. Someone mused that the young hares they'd caught were surprisingly sharp-toothed and might have escaped if they'd been bigger. Qin Tian instructed Ye to watch their captives, presumably some small animals in a cage, while he went off to build a fire. Qin Tian agreed to something off-screen. Ye, the pink-haired girl, cooked seafood over a sizzling fire, announcing it was ready to eat. A net full of crabs and shellfish hangs ready to be collected. Qin Tian assured someone he'd be back later, walks through the forest. A cracking sound suddenly breaks the silence as he sharpens a stick. Qin Tian, mid-bite, is reminded to save something. Curious, Ye asks if the discarded items might actually come in handy. Qin Tian mused that something might come in handy later. Their current seafood supply was only enough for 2 days. Luckily, low tide would be during the afternoon for the next few days, giving them a great opportunity to gather more food. Qin Tian, enjoying a piece of seafood, realized how fortunate they were not to have any seafood allergies. He then mused that depending on the ocean for food was not a long-term solution, and he'd need to find other food sources. Qin Tian looked tired, sporting noticeable dark circles. Ye, holding a small dish of food, worriedly asked if he was full. Under the moonlight, Qin Tian told Ye he was going to sleep and to wake him up at midnight. She simply agreed. Ye realized with a blush that Qin Tian hadn't slept all night because of her. A beautiful sunrise paints the sky as Qin Tian wakes up, surprised it's already morning. He seems startled as he realizes how late he's slept. Qin Tian lay peacefully on the soft grass, seemingly lost in a deep slumber. Suddenly he woke up, rubbing his eyes as a voice gently announced his awakening. Qin Tian, adjusting his glove, questions Ye about why she didn't call him to switch shifts last night. Ye, with a slightly coy expression, seems to be holding back a secret. The pink-haired girl, Ye, gently explained to Qin Tian that she let him sleep in. He looks at her sleepily as she tells him to rest some more and not worry about anything else today. He gestured. She readily agreed. Qin Tian then walked towards a leaf-covered shelter. Qin Tian, noting the tide would go out around 1 p.m., decided to search for more supplies before then. Qin Tian walked through the rustling forest. Qin Tian, weary after 2 hours of searching, found only a handful of strange-looking fruit, confirming his fears about survival on the island. Qin Tian checked the sun and realized it was around 9 a.m. He looked thoughtfully towards the trees. Qin Tian wondered aloud how far they were from the beach. He struggled to his feet, determined to head back. Qin Tian realized he needed to head to the beach before the tide went out. Something suddenly caught his attention, making him pause thoughtfully. Qin Tian stumbled upon something unexpected in the deserted island's wilderness, questioning its presence there. He took a hurried step forward, startled by the strange discovery. Qin Tian stumbled upon a vast bamboo forest, his eyes widening in awe. Bam! Something slams hard against a piece of bamboo. Qin Tian confidently chops bamboo, realizing its versatility for crafting essential survival tools. He thinks about all the useful items he can create with this readily available material. Qin Tian struggled to chop down some bamboo, discovering it was tougher than he anticipated. With each swing of his stone axe, the bamboo would shake, absorbing and deflecting much of the force. He realized this task would be harder than it looked. Bamboo stalks swayed dramatically as Qin Tian, hopeful, speculated about finding bamboo shoots in the dense forest. Qin Tian, kneeling amongst freshly cut bamboo, realized he'd overdone it. His hands were numb, and though he'd been gone for 2 hours, there was still plenty of food back at camp. He'd spent a lot of time and effort cutting bamboo, and it was already almost noon. Qin Tian snapped a piece of bamboo, slightly annoyed he hadn't found this bamboo grove sooner. He realized he'd been there a while and needed to move on. Qin Tian, carrying a bundle of bamboo, hurried through the lush jungle as someone urged him to move faster. As he emerged from the thick foliage, he was greeted by a familiar voice welcoming him back. Ye, surprised, wondered if Qin Tian had prepared the roasted fish. He confirmed, casually mentioning he'd done it earlier. Someone prepared something, just in case someone else was late. We see some bound stalks of bamboo, possibly implying preparedness for shelter or some other practical purpose on the island. Ye, beaming, called Qin Tian over to eat, worried the fish was getting cold. He, slightly preoccupied, asked her to wait a moment while he set down some bamboo he was carrying. Qin Tian stared at the burnt offering with a perplexed expression, wondering what it could possibly be. Someone then asked him why he wasn't eating the fish, noticing his unease. Ye, the pink-haired girl, decided to save her food for later, because it was too hot. Qin Tian, holding a skewer of fish, worried about disappointing her, hoped the fish tasted better than it looked. Ye, curious, asked him how it was. Ye, beaming, looked thrilled, while Qin Tian seemed to be reacting to something she said. Then someone groans, seemingly in pain or discomfort. Qin Tian's eyes widened in surprise as he tasted something. He declared the food super amazing. Ye, with her bright pink hair, looked on curiously. Qin Tian showed Ye something, giving her a thumbs up. Intrigued, she asked if it was real. Determined, Ye decided to give it a shot herself, mimicking Qin Tian, much to his surprise. Qin Tian encourages Ye, reminding her that perseverance leads to victory. Qin Tian casually eats some cooked meat, while Ye Lin gags and covers her mouth, clearly disgusted. She exclaims that the meat is horribly burnt and bitter, nearly choking her. Ye Lin, worried, apologized for wasting precious food. Qin Tian reassured her, saying it was just slightly burnt, but jokingly warned him not to burn it again. Qin Tian, clutching a piece of food, declares that they can't waste anything. He then offers scallops to someone, presumably Ye Lin, as an alternative, if they can't handle the fish. Ye Lin, determined, bit down on something, declaring she's all in. Qin Tian, looking concerned, told her not to push herself too hard. Qin Tian relaxed by the fire while Ye Lin coughed, seemingly affected by the smoke. Night fell, and a bright moon illuminated the sky above them. Ye Lin, startled, asks Qin Tian what he's doing as he forcefully cracks a bamboo stalk. Qin Tian is crafting a fishing cage. He uses a stone tool and some green bamboo-like material, and the process involves some cracking sounds. He's making a bigger trap because someone suggested the bottle trap is too small to catch many fish. He's determined to catch a larger haul this time. Ye Lin eagerly offered her assistance to Qin Tian. He pointed to some bamboo and gave her specific instructions to create a makeshift water bottle. Ye Lin, holding a knife and a bamboo staff, confidently declared she'd handle the smaller tasks to ensure their survival on the island, emphasizing the need for teamwork. Qin Tian carefully worked with something, possibly bamboo, while Ye Lin watched. He reassured her he'd be careful. He thought to himself, noticing how much she'd changed. The pink-haired girl surprised him by offering her help, hinting at a promising future. He explained the 3 steps to making a fishing cage, starting with splitting a bamboo pipe into strips, being careful not to split the knots. Next, he instructed to break some bamboo strips at intervals and then weave them into a cage. Some bamboo strips are woven around a core, leaving loose ends. The loose ends are then tucked into the open end of the woven tube, creating a funnel shape. This funnel makes it easy to enter but hard to exit. Qin Tian proudly displayed his newly crafted fishing cage, earning a cool 500 points for his ingenuity. Someone admires their handiwork, a slightly crooked but decent creation, explaining their novice status. Qin Tian and Ye Lin sat quietly by the crackling campfire, the night casting long shadows around them. Ye Lin, the pink-haired girl, proudly presents a crafted bamboo container to Qin Tian near a crackling fire. He turns, curious to see her handiwork. She asks him if it's okay, clearly seeking his approval. Qin Tian is praised for his clever idea of using something for threading. A small problem arises, however. He confidently takes charge of the situation, knife in hand. As night fell, Ye Lin asked Qin Tian about their plan for the next day. He told her he needed to return to the bamboo forest for more supplies. Ye Lin, holding a green canteen, eagerly asked Qin Tian if she could join him, hoping to be of some help and worried about being idle at the camp. Qin Tian seemed relieved, glad to finally discuss this. He explained he hadn't given Ye Lin many tasks initially because of her emotional instability. Now that she's more stable, he feels less worried. Qin Tian hatched a mischievous plan, chuckling to himself about bossing Ye Lin around. She noticed his sinister expression and instantly regretted her previous words, a worried look crossing her face. Someone just said something significant. Those words. It hangs in the air, heavy with meaning. Lost in a seemingly endless bamboo forest, someone is overwhelmed by its vastness. Someone agreed that the place was initially shocking. Ye Lin, carrying something long and green, suggested they rest after 2 hours of walking. Qin Tian, surveying the sunlit clearing, suggested they set up camp there for safety from wild animals. Ye Lin, thoughtfully touching her hair, seemed to consider his idea. Ye Lin, holding a green canteen, seems lost in thought. Qin Tian realizes their biggest challenge remains finding food, and moving their camp isn't a good idea right now. Qin Tian, carrying a green container, seems ready for a task. Someone reminds him that based on last night's discussion, he's in charge of finding bamboo shoots. A hand gently touches his, suggesting a supportive gesture before he sets off. Someone hands over a knife, stressing the importance of returning to camp before afternoon, regardless of whether bamboo shoots are found. Ye Lin, with a determined glint in her eye, assures them she won't stray too far. Qin Tian, holding a piece of bamboo, noticed they were in a vast bamboo forest and figured they'd find plenty of bamboo shoots. Ye Lin, knife in hand, wondered where the bamboo shoots were. Someone's feet appeared, seemingly rushing towards her. The pink-haired girl excitedly discovered bamboo shoots. She realized the larger ones were too cumbersome, opting for smaller, more manageable ones. Ye Lin diligently gathered bamboo shoots, pleased with her plentiful harvest, believing it would sustain them for a while. With a subtle gesture, the pink-haired girl effortlessly broke a spiked log. Her expression shifts, a grunt escaping her lips as she focuses her energy. Ye Lin, startled, wonders about a strange noise. A wild boar suddenly appears from the bamboo thicket, causing her alarm. Ye Lin spotted something, exclaiming about wild boars. Her heart pounded as she told herself to stay calm in this tense moment. Ye Lin, the pink-haired girl, looked terrified and covered her mouth, realizing she couldn't warn the others. Spotting something in the bamboo grove, Lin knew she had to tell Qin Tian immediately. Realizing they couldn't stay there, she hurried off. Someone is clearly fed up with a bamboo forest and wants out now. Suddenly, a voice cries out, "Qin Tian!" from the dense greenery filled with urgency. Qin Tian, surprised, returned to find a shocked Lin. He questioned her early return. She jumped, startled by his sudden appearance. Something cracked loudly. Qin Tian, with a shocked expression, asked if someone had encountered wild boars. He seemed seriously worried and demanded confirmation. Qin Tian urgently asked Lin if she had a clear view of something. With wide, worried eyes, she confirmed without hesitation, pointing towards the dense bamboo. The pink-haired girl urgently pointed, warning of 8 somethings heading their way. Someone grabbed her hand, a sudden protective gesture. Urgently grabbing her hand, Qin Tian told Lin they had to escape immediately. Qin Tian leans in close, his face just inches from Lin's. She looks up at him, a playful smile on her lips. Qin Tian's face hardened as he realized the danger they were in. Wild boars, though not carnivorous, were incredibly aggressive, and they needed to escape the bamboo forest fast. An exclamation mark emphasizes the urgency of the situation. Qin Tian and Lin find their path back to camp, unexpectedly blocked by a whole herd of wild boars. He curses under his breath, surprised and frustrated because there were no boars there earlier. He realizes their return is now complicated, if not dangerous. Qin Tian and Lin emerge from their cave, their eyes widening in surprise as they spot a large boar and its piglet nearby. A large wild boar is described in detail. Its size, diet, habitat, and even the texture of its fur. The boar's social behavior is revealed. They travel in groups, foraging in the mornings and evenings, seeking shade during the hottest part of the day. Finally, the boar's fierce nature is emphasized. While often prey for tigers, they are capable of defending themselves and even killing their predator. Qin Tian urgently whispered to Lin, gesturing for them to sneak away quietly. A boar sniffed the air, catching a scent. It suddenly grunted, seemingly alerted. A massive scarred boar glared menacingly. It charged, grunting fiercely towards the unsuspecting pair in the bamboo grove. The pink-haired girl gasped, eyes wide with alarm, at the sudden appearance of the wild beast. Her companion turned, his expression shifting to one of concern. Qin Tian suddenly grabbed Lin's hand and urged her to run, a look of panic on his face as he yelled that they'd been discovered. A large boar galloped powerfully across a grassy field. A herd of wild boars was rapidly closing in, less than 2 minutes away. Someone realized they were in serious trouble and needed a plan fast. Qin Tian and Lin ran through a bright green forest, their hands clasped together. Exhausted, Lin confessed she could barely keep going. Lin, breathing heavily and sweating, looks panicked as if something terrible just happened. She wonders aloud, fearfully, what will happen to her, and if she is going to die there. Lin was determined not to endanger Qin Tian, even if it meant sacrificing herself. She walked away, her resolve evident in her posture. Exhausted, the pink-haired girl urged Qin Tian to leave her behind. He refused, grabbing her hand and pulling her along. Distressed, the pink-haired girl cried out that she was a burden and wanted to be left alone. The dark-haired man's expression turned serious, seemingly shocked by her outburst. Qin Tian looked stunned, wondering aloud if he's on a hidden camera TV show. Qin Tian, trekking through dense bamboo, suddenly wondered if Lin was suggesting he leave her behind to improve his own chances of survival. Someone shouted angrily, challenging the notion of only one survivor. Wild boars appeared, startling a nearby girl. The pink-haired girl began to say something to the black-haired guy, but he quickly told her to shut up. Cornered and with escape looking impossible, Qin Tian gripped his makeshift weapon, his resolve hardening. Lin looked terrified, but determined, bracing herself for a fight. A terrifying roar echoed through the jungle, sealing their fate, startling Qin Tian and Lin. He raises an axe defensively as she covers her ears. In fright, something large and brown is approaching them quickly. A wise old hunter once claimed no beast was too fearsome, be it wolf or boar. But now, someone reveals a lone wolf's weakness. Separated from its pack, it loses its courage and strength. A startled boar trembled, apparently spooked by something unseen. Someone explained that wild boars are surprisingly weak in herds, easily frightened and quick to scatter. The ground vibrated with heavy thumps as something approached, sending the boar fleeing in terror. Qin Tian, startled and determined, chopped bamboo with a makeshift tool. He seemed to be bracing himself for something, his expression a mix of excitement and exertion. A terrifying roar echoes through the air. Qin Tian, with a triumphant grin, exclaimed their plan had worked. He prepared for one final, decisive move. 2 wild boars were caught in their trap. A herd of animals rushes through a lush green landscape. Qin Tian, wielding a makeshift hammer, swings with determined force. He grunts with effort as he brings the hammer down. He challenged someone, saying if they were too scared, they should just leave. Suddenly, a group of wild boars appeared, looking ready to charge. A grunting boar charged, a makeshift spear thudding against the ground just in front of it. The scene shifted to a dense bamboo forest. hinting at a nearby escape. Exhausted, Qin Tian collapsed in the bamboo forest, his legs giving out. A large animal suddenly stomped the ground near him. Lin frantically checked Qin Tian for injuries, her voice filled with worry. He reassured her he was fine, brushing off her concerns. Qin Tian, worried about the boar's potential return, abruptly stood up, urging Lin to head back to camp after he retrieves his axe. Lin's white dress brushed against the grass as she walked, followed closely by Qin Tian. Someone quickly grabbed an axe, relieved it was still intact. Qin Tian's eyes widened in alarm, sweat beading on his forehead. He wondered aloud, stunned, why the tusked boar was still present. Qin Tian froze, a makeshift club gripped in his hand, as a grunting boar emerged from the bamboo thicket. He suddenly realized why the creature had stopped its attack. A reopened wound was bleeding profusely. A sudden realization hits. Lone wild boars are incredibly dangerous and will fight fiercely if threatened. A menacing boar glares intensely, a silent promise of violence in its eyes. A menacing figure looms large. Someone yells, "Go to hell!" With intense fury. Qin Tian braced himself as a charging boar, tusks bared, barreled towards him. He wondered aloud about their terrible luck and questioned the alignment of the planets. Qin Tian, face grim, realized he had to distract the charging boar to give Lin a chance to get away. A fierce roar echoed through the bamboo grove as the beast closed in. Qin Tian sprang into action, a blur against the green backdrop as a wild boar charged. Lin, her pink hair vibrant against the darkening scene, cried out his name in alarm. Lin looked shocked and worried. She urgently told someone to go back to camp using the familiar route. A boar charges through the bamboo forest, Qin Tian hot on its heels. Lin watches, bewildered and afraid, wondering what's going on. Something whizzes past with a whoosh. Qin Tian, running with determination, successfully lured the boar away. With a determined, "Now!" the hand reached out, a metallic ding echoing as it made contact with something unseen. Qin Tian, with a determined glint in his eyes, declared it was time to unleash his true potential. He seems to be activating some kind of swift cheetah ability. A futuristic interface appeared, offering the swift cheetah's ability. A hand reached out and decisively pressed the US button. A surge of blue energy erupted as the ability activated. A wounded boar charges, letting out a furious roar. With a burst of speed and a shout of "Goodbye!" Qin Tian, propelled by a sudden surge of energy, zooms away, leaving a blue streak in his wake. He's just activated a swift cheetah experience card, granting him incredible speed for a full day. A gentle breeze rustled through the bamboo forest beneath a clear sky where birds soared freely. Qin Tian sprinted through the dense jungle foliage, rustling leaves and startling a pair of white birds. Qin Tian, panting heavily, realized his new ability was incredibly draining. He pushed himself, fearing he'd collapse from exhaustion if he stopped running. Qin Tian realized his newfound power had a time limit, only 3 minutes, despite the card lasting a whole day. He seemed worried, panting slightly as he took in this information. Confident, Qin Tian realized his new ability had helped him lose the boar, putting a safe distance between them. A thump echoed through the air. Birds took flight against the clear blue sky. Qin Tian, startled, looked up at the sky with a puzzled expression. A hand reached out, trembling, toward the grassy ground. Qin Tian's face, etched with shock and fear, appeared, sweat beading on his skin. Qin Tian recognizes a familiar menacing movement and fears the tusked boar has returned. A fierce roar confirms his chilling suspicion as the beast charges, eyes blazing red. A wild boar charged, sending leaves scattering. Qin Tian, exasperated, wondered what fresh hell this was. Utterly spent, he realized he couldn't run any further. Qin Tian urgently scrambled up a tree, needing to hide from something or someone. Qin Tian hides behind a tree, anxiously wondering if the boar will find him. High in a tree, Qin Tian worried if the boar below could smell him. The boar sniffed the air intently, its gaze fixed upwards. A dramatic close-up hinted at impending danger. Something big is about to happen. Qin Tian, startled, realized the boar had found him. The boar, looking up with a wound, appeared to be less threatening than expected. He wondered if the boar was truly injured after chasing him for so long. High in a tree, Qin Tian realized the wounded boar wasn't leaving and was likely waiting for him below. The boar, grunting menacingly, stared up at him from the base of the tree. Safe in the tree, Qin Tian realized with relief, the boar below was male and couldn't climb. Sweaty and exhausted, he decided to rest and plan his next move against the boar. Qin Tian, startled and sweating, looks around in confusion, demanding to know what's happening. He remembered the old hunter's unbelievable tale of boars strong enough to fell trees. Suddenly a loud crack echoed as a massive boar charged, proving the hunter right. Qin Tian struggles to hold up a large tree, sweat dripping from his brow. The tree creaks ominously, threatening to fall. He realizes he only has half an hour before it collapses completely. Though exhausted, Qin Tian feels his energy returning and plans to use his special ability to escape just in time. Hidden in the foliage, Qin Tian noticed the boar had stopped. A wounded boar, weakened from blood loss, stumbled through the forest. Qin Tian, eyes narrowed in calculation, Tian realized this massive boar could feed them for a while if he could kill it and preserve the meat. A wounded boar stumbled past Qin Tian. Observing the boar's unsteady gait, Yelin realized it was weak and considered seizing the opportunity to kill it. Qin Tian, determined, lunged forward, knife in hand, refusing to back down from the charging boar. Qin Tian, knife in hand, confidently gestures for someone to approach, a sly grin on his face. He thinks to himself that a cornered animal is dangerous, so he needs to be careful. He decides to wait for the right moment to strike. A wild boar charged towards Qin Tian. He gripped his knife, ready to strike. His eyes focused, determined, he prepared to act. Right now. With a fierce yell, Qin Tian lunged forward, knife flashing, aiming straight for the charging boar. Something whizzed past quickly and powerfully. A loud thud echoed through the forest. Qin Tian, knife in hand, stared at the downed boar, realizing just how close he'd come to becoming dinner. Qin Tian stared in disbelief, realizing something wasn't quite dead yet. A large creature trembled nearby, causing him concern. Someone lunges with a knife, declaring their intent to finish off a weakened opponent. The knife slices through the air with a whooshing sound. A dark-haired young man ducks, muttering something about a quick death being a mercy. With a determined grunt, Qin Tian plunged his knife into the wild boar he'd wrestled to the ground. He plunged his knife into the boar's back with a grunt. He struggled, realizing the beast's hide was incredibly thick and tough. Qin Tian struggled, his dagger failing to fully penetrate a tough hide. Incredulous, he asserted his dominance over his unseen opponent. A menacing voice urged someone to stop struggling, promising a swift end. A bloody knife plunged into the ground, emphasizing the threat. A bloody knife lay stuck in the ground. Someone declared triumphantly that their target was finally dead. The dark-haired man lay on the ground, seemingly lifeless. He suddenly gasped, then received a notification of 2,000 points for a kill. Qin Tian, exhausted and blood-splattered, lay on the ground after killing a boar. He worried about Yelin's safe return to camp. Pushing aside his anxieties, he realized he had to leave quickly before the scent of blood drew predators. Qin Tian, looking at the massive boar he'd just taken down, realized he couldn't carry it all back at once. He decided to butcher it on the spot and make several trips. He started slicing, preparing to bring the first load back to camp. As dusk settled, Qin Tian, noticing the fading light, decided to hide something valuable, worried about attracting unwanted attention from wild animals. He looked determined as he considered the best hiding spot. Qin Tian worriedly sighed, realizing that even hidden blood could attract dangerous animals with their keen sense of smell. Qin Tian, covered in blood, camouflaged something with branches, hoping it wouldn't be found. A loud thump startled the pink-haired girl, Yelin, as she tended to a small fire near a leaf-covered shelter. Someone is building a fire. Yelin, the pink-haired girl, realized she needed to hurry up with something, her expression filled with determination. Yelin gracefully played a stringed instrument. She adjusted her position slightly, her pink hair cascading around her. She continued to play, seemingly lost in the music. Yelin tore a piece of her dress. Something dropped to the ground with a soft thud. Yelin carefully wrapped up some ashes, a curious plan forming in her mind. Qin Tian, bewildered, asked her what she was doing. She revealed her ingenious escape strategy. If they encountered the wild boars again, she'd throw the ashes in their faces to blind them and make a run for it. Someone asks the pink-haired girl if she's going back to the bamboo forest. Determined, she packs a bag, stating she must find Qin Tian. With wide, surprised eyes, the pink-haired girl declared someone had just missed their opportunity. Qin Tian, looking smug, held a rope, seemingly having just returned. Someone off-panel teased him for not collecting the fish earlier. Qin Tian proudly displays his catch of 2 fish. Yelin calls out to him with concern, anxiously asking if he's all right or hurt. The pink-haired girl, Yelin, looked at Qin Tian with concern as she held a string of fish. He playfully questioned if he looked injured, turning slightly away from her. Qin Tian is clearly impressed, exclaiming about something awesome. Overwhelmed with emotion, Yelin tearfully embraces him, clutching a string of fish. He returns the hug, seemingly touched by her gesture. Yelin confessed to Qin Tian that she was worried he wasn't coming back. Qin Tian seems relieved and touched by her words, reassured Yelin that he was okay. Qin Tian then noticed she was soaked and wondered if she'd taken a shower. Yelin giggles, covering her mouth playfully as Qin Tian takes off his shirt. Qin Tian, looking relaxed, hinted at a wild story. He adjusted his pants, implying something eventful happened after he led a boar away. Qin Tian, with a mischievous glint in his eyes, told Yelin he'd explain everything later. Qin Tian, with a smirk, teases a blushing Yelin about her apparent awkwardness. He suggests she take off her wet clothes and dry them by the fire. Yelin, arms crossed and cheeks flushed, seems flustered by his suggestion. Qin Tian warns someone near the campfire about the cold night. The other person, likely Yelin, based on the context, thanks him sweetly, but suggests he could simply turn around instead. He appears mildly surprised by her subtle hint. Someone calls out to Yelin, startling her. She turns, a curious expression on her face, and asks what's going on. With a confident smirk, the dark-haired guy swiftly shielded his eyes. He seemed ready for action. Qin Tian startled Yelin, causing her to cover her eyes and cry out in alarm. He teased her playfully, assuring her he hadn't gone that Far. Qin Tian looks pleased as smoke curls from a makeshift shelter roofed with large leaves. Qin Tian lamented the abundance of bamboo shoots they couldn't reach due to wild boars. He reassured Yelin that the fish they'd caught were enough for now, suggesting they avoid the bamboo forest in the future. Qin Tian and Yelin sat by the fire cooking fish. He casually mentioned he'd tricked and killed a boar earlier. He took a bite of his fish, looking thoughtful. Qin Tian casually mentioned he'd stashed a boar carcass in the bamboo forest, planning to retrieve the meat tomorrow. Yelin, wide-eyed and surprised, could only ask if he'd really killed it. Qin Tian confidently states his survival is proof. Enough. Yelin, with visible worry, questions his return to the dangerous bamboo forest. Her voice is full of concern, hinting at unseen dangers. Yelin seems determined. Qin Tian reflects on his boar hunting adventure, admitting it was pure luck he survived and shouldn't push his luck again. But his expression hints at a but. He offered to tell Yelin a story. It began with a family of 3 in a seaside village whose fisherman father drowned. To protect her son, the grieving mother kept him away from the ocean. A mother warned her son not to go near the water, but he disobeyed. Years later, a devastating tsunami struck, sweeping both mother and son into the raging sea. The pink-haired girl excitedly pointed to a dramatic scene unfolding in the water. A son bravely rescued his mother just as she was losing hope against a crashing wave. Someone recalled a story about a kid who learned to swim early because he knew avoiding problems wasn't a solution. The pink-haired girl curiously asked Qin Tian if he knew the story too. He confirmed, thoughtfully mentioning he read it somewhere. Familiar. Qin Tian, turning to Yelin, urged her to take action instead of passively waiting. Yelin, the pink-haired girl, warned that survival on the island would be fraught with challenges. She questioned Qin Tian about handling the boars in the bamboo forest. With a determined glint in his eye, he revealed his plan, a bamboo bow. Qin Tian hatched a plan to craft a bamboo bow to fend off the wild boars. He realized a bow wouldn't just be good for boars, but for any other dangers lurking on the island. The next morning arrived. Qin Tian casually tells Yelin to check the bamboo fish trap, also reminding her not to overcook the fish this time. Yelin yawns sleepily as she walks by, seemingly unbothered by his instructions. Qin Tian reassured someone not to worry. He explained that he used an experience card the previous afternoon, which granted him a temporary ability. This ability, however, expires today. Qin Tian raced back to camp, his special ability fading fast, hoping to make it before it vanished, completely but ready to use it for a quick escape if any more wild animals crossed his path. Just as he suspected, other wild animals have stumbled upon something. A partially eaten boar lay amongst scattered leaves, a stark image against the lush green backdrop. Qin Tian, relieved, realized that most of the boar was still intact, especially the meaty thighs. He covered his mouth, seemingly holding back the stench or a sigh of relief. Qin Tian examined the boar he'd just killed. He realized the fur, though coarse, could be useful. He decided to take it back to camp for a blanket or bedding. He carefully began skinning the boar with his knife. A blade sliced through something, the sound effect suggesting a smooth cut. Examining a deep, inch-long wound, someone realized it was old and went down to the bone, unsure of its origin. Examining a deep gash on a boar's hide, Qin Tian was wary of whatever creature could inflict such a wound. He realized the boar's legs would provide a substantial food supply lasting them at least a month if rationed carefully. Qin Tian carefully cuts something with a small knife, a slit sound echoing. He realizes he can use the tendons for bowstrings, a crucial survival tool. With a final stab, he finished off the boar. Exhausted, he realized he couldn't carry the whole thing back alone. He thought about bringing Yelin for help, but the fear of another boar encounter kept him from it. Qin Tian, determined, hurried his pace, realizing his enhanced abilities were fading. The pink-haired girl, Yelin, meticulously sharpened a stick against a rock, a focused glint in her eyes. Yelin examined a sharpened bone, seemingly pleased with its point. Someone off-panel asked her if she planned to use the hare's bone to craft a needle. Qin Tian poked Yelin with something sharp, making her yelp in surprise and pain. Yelin, with a suspicious glint in her eye, wondered aloud if Qin Tian was trying to scare her for insurance money. He looked startled and sweaty, then mumbled an apology. Yelin's eyes widened in surprise, a soft gasp escaping her lips. The pink-haired girl drooled, eyes sparkling, marveling at the 4 boar trotters, wondering if they'd last a week. The guy with dark hair, slightly taken aback, confirmed they were indeed from the boar they caught. He seemed both amused and surprised by her intense focus on the food. The pink-haired girl just repeated, "Trotters?" in disbelief. Qin Tian, massaging his shoulder, figured their supplies would last about 2 weeks if they rationed carefully. He groaned, realizing the heavy load he'd been carrying was taking its toll. The pink-haired girl pointed at a glistening white piece of meat, curious about its greasy appearance. Someone informed her it was pork fat. Seemingly surprised by her lack of knowledge, she simply replied, "Nope," admitting her unfamiliarity. Qin Tian explained something could be used to make lard. Yelin, shaking her head, pointed out they lacked a crucial pot. He seemed about to suggest a solution. Qin Tian, holding a bamboo staff, suggests they make their own. He then playfully asks if someone wants to play with mud, a mischievous glint in his eye. Qin Tian offered to teach Yelin how to make clay pottery. He grabbed a tool and began working the clay. Yelin shyly watched him. Qin Tian, examining the mud, realized it was perfect for pottery. He carefully pressed a moderate amount to form a base, explaining the process to Ye Lin, who watched with interest. As a beginner, he decided to start by crafting a simple bowl. The Encyclopedia of Wilderness Crafts reveals 6 pottery techniques. First, pinching clay to form a pot. Then, a slab construction method. Next, a clay strip forming technique is shown. Slip casting is demonstrated with molds. On a wheel, clay is thrown into shape. Finally, press molding creates a defined form. Someone is carefully rolling mud into even sticks. They're thinking through different pottery techniques. They decide against some methods because they lack tools. Now they begin coiling the mud sticks around a base, starting their pottery project. Qin Tian, seemingly pleased, works with clay, explaining that the clay strip forming technique is easy enough even for crafting novices like him and Ye Lin. Qin Tian, with a determined glint in his eye, realizes he can finally manipulate the coils to his will. Qin Tian presented something to Ye Lin, a curious stacked object. Ye Lin seemed surprised, almost speechless as she watched him. He appeared equally bemused by the situation. Ye Lin giggled at Qin Tian's oddly shaped clay creation. He frantically tossed it away, mortified and flustered, assuring her it was a misunderstanding. He explained that the delicate clay needed careful handling to avoid another mishap. Qin Tian, with a slight smirk, seemed to be explaining something to Ye Lin, who listened intently with a finger to her cheek. She affirmed his explanation with a simple, "Okay." He confidently confirmed he'd taught her a new technique. Qin Tian encouraged Ye Lin to try a new technique. She agreed readily. Confident, he declared he could easily master the skill, and he did, apparently succeeding perfectly. Qin Tian, holding a crude bowl, realized something wasn't as difficult as he'd thought. He smirked, seemingly pleased with himself. Qin Tian checks on Ye Lin, offering encouragement and a small bowl, assuring her it's all right to struggle at first. Ye Lin, surrounded by several handmade bowls, seemed dissatisfied with her crafting efforts. Meanwhile, Qin Tian, visibly straining, squeezed something in his hand, likely clay for more pottery. He reassured her, saying her work was good enough. He suggested she try making a cooking pot while he built a kiln, deciding to leave pottery to her in the future, realizing everyone has their strengths. She seemed surprised by his offer. Qin Tian is asked about the desired size of some clay pots. He thoughtfully replies they should be a standard size, like those commonly used at home to make firing easier. He then decides to air dry the newly made clay pots, explaining that they must be dry before firing. He carefully placed a long green pole into the ground near a small fire and some pottery. He knew firing pottery directly in the bonfire was an option, but a kiln would give much better results, even if it was more work. A muffled thud echoed as the pole found its place. He continued to adjust the setup meticulously, mindful of potential cracks during firing. Someone carefully places a circular object, possibly a grate, onto the ground near a pit. It seems they're building something, maybe a kiln, and they're instructed to burn the grate first to harden it. Then they need to mold the main kiln structure around the hardened base. Qin Tian carefully shaped the mud into a barrel. Suddenly, he realized it was already evening. Qin Tian, wiping sweat from his brow, decided to call it a day and pick up his task tomorrow. Qin Tian confidently assesses their food situation. Their bamboo fish trap provides more than enough, plus they have a good stockpile of jerky. Qin Tian, enjoying a skewer of cooked meat, mused that with their current food supply, he and Ye Lin wouldn't have to worry about meals for a while. His thoughts then turned to improving their shelter. Ye Lin, the pink-haired girl, is beaming, seemingly lost in her own thoughts. Someone asks her why she's smiling so brightly, catching her off guard. She seems surprised, as if she hadn't realized she was smiling. Qin Tian confirms something with a confident, "Yup," while Ye Lin beams at him. He holds out what seems to be a piece of cloth, possibly clothing for her. Qin Tian, with a sly smirk, put on a glove. Someone mused that being alive is pretty great, considering the circumstances. Then, a close-up reveals someone holding the edge of a light-colored fabric. They seem to be examining it closely. Qin Tian complimented Ye Lin on her excellent sewing skills. She modestly replied she could still sew, but worried about their dwindling clothes supply. He agreed, realizing their predicament could become quite revealing if they couldn't find a solution. Ye Lin seemed worried, but Qin Tian reassured her they'd have fresh clothes soon, and everything would be fine. He stretched, looking confident and optimistic. Qin Tian, stretching, realized he had a system, and with it, he could build a civilization and eventually escape the island. Qin Tian takes a determined bite of something held between his teeth. Ye Lin wondered aloud if brushing their teeth with charcoal would actually work. She held up a chewed twig and some charcoal, presenting them as makeshift toothbrush and toothpaste. The pink-haired girl seemed surprised. The dark-haired guy explained that crushed charcoal can be used as a makeshift toothpaste. Qin Tian brushed his teeth with a makeshift toothbrush, explaining to Ye Lin that it's a special kind of paste best used sparingly. He then turned to her, curious about her reaction to something. Ye Lin appeared concerned or unsure, her expression slightly apprehensive. Qin Tian and Ye Lin sipped from their bamboo cups. The pink-haired girl commented that the drink was a bit rough on her teeth, but still manageable. Suddenly, a mysterious object appeared in a clay pot. A clay pot filled with some kind of dark material is shown close up. The pink-haired girl, likely Ye Lin, asks Qin Tian how long it takes to fire clay pottery. Qin Tian and and Ye Lin worked together, carefully placing pottery into a kiln. He explained that their rough pottery needs about 5 hours to fire properly. Ye Lin, surprised, questioned if they really had to wait until afternoon for something. Qin Tian seemed to confirm her concern. Someone explained that if the firing is successful, the pottery needs to cool overnight. The pink-haired girl, looking shocked, questioned what "if" meant. As if answering her question, a cracking sound emerged from the fire. Qin Tian explains that firing pottery requires precise temperature and time control. He warns the pink-haired girl that without careful management, the pottery could crack or warp. He suggests making extra pottery as a precaution. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, listens intently with wide eyes, seemingly concerned about the process's complexity. Qin Tian observes the smoking kiln, likely contemplating the outcome. Ye Lin wondered if she was being left alone. Qin Tian, tending a crackling fire, explained he needed to stay and monitor the kiln's temperature. He added there was another reason he needed to remain. Near a fire, Ye Lin confidently assured Qin Tian that pottery making would be no problem for her. Qin Tian, looking pleased, told her to go ahead and take charge. It's noon on the deserted island, and the dark-haired guy is staring at his pottery, disappointed that most of it broke during firing. Qin Tian dramatically collapsed onto the ground, startling the pink-haired girl, Ye Lin. She seemed taken aback, wondering what he was doing. Qin Tian worriedly pondered how to improve his pottery skills, since too many of his pots were cracking. As he worked, another piece unfortunately broke, highlighting the urgency of the situation. Qin Tian turned to see Ye Lin holding a bowl of some mysterious powder, a curious expression on her face as she asked him what it was. The pink-haired girl pointed to some ground-up pottery, explaining it's called clinker and is used to make stronger clay. She further elaborated that mixing clinker with regular clay helps it hold its shape better when fired. Darkness fell, enveloping the island in midnight. It was time for Qin Tian and Ye Lin to switch tasks. Ye Lin, tending the fire, seemed content. Qin Tian, just coming into view, wanted to finish with whatever he was working on. Qin Tian sat by the fire, seemingly pleased with his pottery progress, noting half survived this time thanks to adding clinkers. He looked down at a few newly made bowls, 2 broken, but others intact. Qin Tian carefully examined a piece of pottery. He mused that with better temperature control, he could improve his pottery skills. He was pleased that despite some imperfections, the pottery would be good enough for their everyday needs on the island. Qin Tian looked pleased with the supplies gathered near the shelter where Ye Lin was sleeping soundly. The next day dawned on the island. Qin Tian hoped the pleasant weather would hold. Ye Lin looked concerned, her wide eyes hinting at a shared worry. Ye Lin, curious, asks Qin Tian if they should add water when cooking pork fat, worried about splattering. He explains that adding water increases oil yield and prevents burning. Qin Tian, stirring something in a wok, casually mentions a trick to avoid oil splattering when adding water. He seems confident and resourceful as he prepares the food. Qin Tian explained that the water used in rendering pork fat evaporates, so there's no need to worry about splattering. Ye Lin, with wide, curious eyes, listened intently as he then mentioned they needed to wait for the oil to render and grind some shells into powder first. Qin Tian was grinding something by the fire. Ye Lin, curious, asked him what he was doing. He casually replied that he was making soap. The pink-haired girl seemed surprised by this resourceful ingenuity. Ye Lin's eyes widened, a look of pleasant surprise dawning on her face as she realized something. "Oh, soap," she whispered, touching her cheek in wonder. Qin Tian reacts with surprised excitement to the mention of soap. Ye Lin looks equally surprised, her wide eyes hinting at a shared revelation. Qin Tian confidently presented something to Ye Lin, challenging her with a question. Intrigued, he quizzed her about a chemical reaction involving alkali and oil. Ye Lin answered correctly with saponification, but demanded an explanation, hinting at a deeper understanding. Qin Tian, holding a bamboo container, excitedly declared he'd figured something out, while Ye Lin looked on with curiosity. He exclaimed, "I got it!" with enthusiasm. Ye Lin suddenly had a bright idea, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Qin Tian expertly cracks a shell, revealing its powdery contents, which he knows are calcium carbonate. Someone is carefully placing pieces of something on a rock. Qin Tian explains that heating this material will produce calcium oxide. He watches the smoke rise from the heated material, seemingly pleased with the results. Qin Tian carefully stirred something in a steaming bowl, a plume of white rising into the air. Qin Tian, with a curious smirk, asked Ye Lin what she was up to. Ye Lin seemed to be fanning something, explaining that heated calcium carbonate creates carbon dioxide, which can make you dizzy. Ye Lin confidently declared a small amount of something was fine. Qin Tian, remembering his chemistry, had a sudden realization about calcium oxide and water forming calcium hydroxide. Qin Tian carefully add some ash to a steaming container, explaining that it's potassium carbonate and can be used to make potassium hydroxide. Qin Tian carefully instructed Ye Lin to scoop only the clear top layer of the plant ash water. She nodded in agreement, diligently following his advice. They carefully filled small bamboo cups with the purified water. Qin Tian explained that potassium hydroxide solution, being alkaline, reacts with oil and lard, to create soap through saponification. He carefully poured a solution from a green bottle into a container, producing a hissing sound. Someone explains that potassium carbonate, while alkaline, can be used to make soap, but potassium hydroxide makes a stronger soap. Qin Tian listens intently, absorbing the information. Ye Lin appears, seemingly interested in the conversation. On a deserted island, the pink-haired girl poured something into a bowl as the black-haired guy stirred a steaming pot. He stressed the vital importance of soap, explaining that without medicine, any illness could be a death sentence. Qin Tian, focused and determined, carefully checks the progress of the rendering lard, anticipating its completion. Qin Tian, resourceful as ever, decides to make the best of limited resources by crafting soap from scarce lard. Intrigued, Ye Lin spots something floating nearby. Curious and hopeful, she wonders if the sweet-smelling, floating objects are edible. The pink-haired girl offered the dark-haired guy a bowl of something steaming. He cautiously took a spoonful. As she warned him, it was cracklings and might not be to his liking. His face twisted in disgust. It was way too oily and greasy for his taste. Qin Tian enjoys his meal, seemingly unfazed by Ye Lin's disgusted reaction. He casually mentions that what he's eating is actually a delicacy for those who appreciate crunchy textures. Qin Tian chuckled mysteriously, thinking about something others wouldn't. Ye Lin, stirring a mixture, asked him how long it would take to thicken. He watched her work with a subtle smile. Ye Lin carefully poured a liquid into a bowl, while someone told her not to worry about something until tomorrow. Qin Tian seemed to be looking at something in the distance beneath a leafy shelter. Qin Tian suggested gathering banana leaves that afternoon to prepare for the impending rain. Dark, ominous clouds gathered over the trees. Something whizzed past overhead, causing the black-haired man to look up in surprise. Qin Tian noticed the ominous dark clouds gathering overhead and remarked that it looked like heavy rain was coming. He seems concerned about the approaching storm. Qin Tian was grateful for the foresight of building a shelter. He mentally calculated his increasing points, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips as he reached a total of 6,000. A notification dinged, and Qin Tian looked at the holographic screen displaying animal choices. He seemed to be choosing a companion. There were options like a turtle, cheetah, bull, and a cat. Qin Tian pondered, realizing he was 5,000 points short of buying a new ability. He wondered how many points crafting the bamboo bow would yield. Qin Tian, with a sly smirk, asked Ye Lin what she was thinking, clearly up to something. She looked surprised, clutching a bowl, a few drops of water spilling down her dress. He watched her reaction, his expression playful and curious. Qin Tian was worried about Ye Lin, who'd been gone a long time. She playfully scolded him for his concern. He asked her about the soap. She admitted it was decent, bubbly, but dried out her hair. Ye Lin, holding a bowl, seemed relieved they had soap on the island. Someone offered her something, and she gratefully accepted it, surprised and thankful to learn they'd made it themselves. He offered her a comb, casually saying he just felt like giving it to her. Later, he handed her a boar skin, instructing her to clean it with a dagger to prevent it from rotting. Qin Tian explained something to Ye Lin, gesturing with his hand. She listens attentively, holding a bowl. She simply replies, "Okay," seemingly understanding his instructions. The narration reveals the topic of their discussion, the ideal bamboo for crafting bows. Qin Tian mused that this type of bamboo was ideal because of its low moisture content. He realized finding dry bamboo on a deserted island was tricky, though. He decided to use heat to dry the bamboo he had. Bows are classified as hard or soft. Someone gripped a bow tightly and crack, the wood splintered. Hard bows require more strength to draw, while soft bows are easier to pull. Although a soft bow takes less force, there's a trade-off. Qin Tian carefully whittled a branch, seemingly crafting a bow, pondering the trade-offs between a soft bow and a hard one. Qin Tian decided a soft bow wouldn't cut it against wild boars. He needed something tougher. He then explained the difference between single and laminated bows, highlighting their construction. He pointed out that a single bow's handle is one piece, while a laminated bow is made of several. Qin Tian carefully whittles a piece of wood with a sharp knife. He thinks, aloud, that the wood isn't ideal for a single bow, it needs to be stronger. He decides a laminated bow would be much better. Having crafted the initial bow pieces, he now meticulously shapes them, pounding them into the desired form. Someone is working on a bow and arrow, carefully bending a long piece of wood between two stakes, the wood creaking under the pressure. They explain that crafting a proper bow requires a specific platform to shape the handle, but they're making do with what they have for now. Qin Tian worriedly realized crafting two bows was taking way longer than expected. A sudden deafening boom echoed, lightning splitting the darkened sky. Qin Tian stopped, a look of shock and confusion washing over his sweat-streaked face as he registered something strange. As a storm rolled in, the pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, urgently warned Qin Tian about the approaching thunder. He reacted swiftly, rushing to store their precious food, trotters and boar tendons, before the downpour. Qin Tian and Ye Lin carefully packed jars, sealing them to protect their contents from moisture and mold. Suddenly, Ye Lin spotted something alarming in the dense foliage and gasped. Qin Tian and Ye Lin excitedly announced they had finally settled into their new island home. The downpour continued, and someone worried it might last all night and Into the next day, another voice chimed in, agreeing that the rain showed no signs of stopping soon. Suddenly, the pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, looked at Qin Tian with wide, surprised eyes and asked if he was secretly a genius. Qin Tian seemed confused by a comment. Ye Lin praised his soap-making skills, calling him a genius. He humbly brushed it off, claiming to be just a bookworm who barely passed his classes. Outside, the rain poured down as Ye Lin started to argue that grades don't define intelligence. Sheltering from the rain, the pink-haired girl declared judging someone based on grades is unfair. Qin Tian, curious, asked if her parents pressured her about academics. With a sigh, she lamented that all parents are alike. Rain fell as a rumbling sound echoed through the air. Qin Tian, his brow furrowed, looked around, asking what that noise was. Rain fell on the makeshift shelter as the pink-haired girl slept peacefully. Suddenly, the black-haired guy's eyes widened, alerted by a strange sound. Recognizing the sound's potential danger, he urgently woke the girl. Ye Lin, drowsy and disoriented, stirred, wondering if breakfast was ready. She seems to have just woken up and asks if it's time for breakfast. Ye Lin, startled, asks Qin Tian what he's doing. He strains, seemingly holding something heavy up, calling for support. Qin Tian urgently told Ye Lin to help him push down a wooden shed, promising explanations later. It was pouring rain as a bewildered Ye Lin asked him what was going on. Qin Tian pulled Ye Lin along urgently as they stepped through the rain. He confessed he had no idea what was happening, but he was certain they were in serious danger. Ye Lin looked back, her wide eyes reflecting a mix of fear and confusion. Qin Tian urgently told Ye Lin to hold on tight so she wouldn't fall. Suddenly, there's a rustling sound from the bushes, and Ye Lin whispers Qin Tian's name, fear creeping into her voice. Qin Tian urgently signaled for Ye Lin to be quiet, a look of concern on his face. A large deer, startled by booming sounds, bounded through the rain, scattering small rabbits. Ye Lin, visibly shaken, confessed to Qin Tian that she had been terrified, thinking some dangerous wild animals were nearby. He seemed equally startled, but quickly recovered. Suddenly, a whole herd of wild boars charged through the forest, grunting and rumbling. Qin Tian realized they were in danger as he recognized the sound of approaching wild boars. He quickly covered Ye Lin's mouth to keep her quiet. High up in a tree, Qin Tian and Ye Lin realized they were surrounded by a massive herd of wild boars, over 20 strong. 2 stubborn boars lingered below, refusing to leave. Qin Tian reassured a seemingly frightened Ye Lin that they were safe from the boars in their current position. 2 wild boars grunt and sniff the air nearby. Qin Tian and Ye Lin hide, relieved that the rain masked their scent. Ye Lin urgently calls Qin Tian's attention to something. Worried, she wonders if what they see is dead. Qin Tian reassures her, observing that they still seem to be breathing. A large creature suddenly lands heavily on the ground nearby. Startled, he eyed the 2 injured boars warily, suspecting they might be playing possum. He considered finishing them off with his dagger, but decided against the risk. The pink-haired girl was puzzled by the gruesome wounds on the wild boars, remarking, they looked like they'd been lashed by a giant whip. Rain poured down heavily on the dense jungle foliage. Shivering in the downpour, the pink-haired girl looked worried as her companion realized they were at risk of hypothermia. Trapped by 2 boars, Qin Tian and Ye Lin were getting desperate. He racked his brain for an escape plan, sweat beading on his brow. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He'd use his shoes as a distraction. He whispered the risky plan to a worried-looking Ye Lin, hoping it would work. Ye Lin looked worried, hands clasped together. Qin Tian, determined, gripped a shoe, hoping. His plan worked. Ready for a fight if it didn't. He swung the shoe with force, a fierce glint in his eyes. Qin Tian recoils from something unseen. A powerful impact throws something through the air with incredible force, and a loud thump. A wild boar, wounded and enraged, charged from the bushes in the pouring rain. 2 wild boars, caught in the downpour, grunt and charge forward, seemingly startled. 2 boars ran off into the rainy night. Qin Tian and Ye Lin, sheltering under a tree, wondered aloud if the boars were really gone. He confirmed they had left. Qin Tian observed the fleeing boars, and deduced that his actions had startled them. He realized something must have frightened the boars earlier, triggering their rampage. Ye Lin looked worried as rain started to pour down on them. Under a rain-swept night sky, Qin Tian urged someone to jump, promising to catch them. High above, the jumper announced they were about to leap. Her foot slipped. Ye Lin cried out in fear as she fell. Qin Tian looked up in shocked disbelief as Ye Lin fell from above. He cursed loudly in surprise and fear. Suddenly, a loud thump echoed through the forest, startling the leaves. Ye Lin cries out in pain, clutching her head, a large bump visible. Worried, she leans over Qin Tian, checking if he's all right. He seems to be unconscious, his head resting on her chest. There's a noticeable throbbing sound effect emanating from the general area of the incident. A system message declared Qin Tian earned a whopping 3,000 points for a dangerous rainy night mission. Qin Tian reacted with shocked excitement to the news of the points. Confused, Ye Lin asked him to repeat what he'd just said. Qin Tian playfully feigned innocence. Ye Lin looked surprised as she learned her quick thinking in taking down the canopy saved them from a boar stampede. Qin Tian noticed the damaged animal trap, relieved it still worked, though repairs were needed. He's grateful Ye Lin and the others are safe, playfully joking about their importance as a food source. Qin Tian slams a rock onto a post near an animal pen, while someone off-panel is told not to say such gruesome things with a cheerful expression. Qin Tian lamented that their recently made soap had already crumbled, though thankfully not from rain. He reassured Ye Lin, who was carrying firewood, that it could be melted and reshaped. Qin Tian worriedly observed the bright sun, hoping it would quickly dry the rain-soaked firewood. Ye Lin stacked some wood as Qin Tian stood close by, sword in hand. There's a brief, unexplained transition. Suddenly, Qin Tian makes a surprising request of Ye Lin. He asks for her bra. Ye Lin looked terrified, clutching herself and whispering, "No way," as a shadow loomed over her. Qin Tian suggested they conserve soap by washing their clothes together. Ye Lin, blushing furiously, quickly clarified that her bra was definitely not included in that plan. A stunned silence hung in the air after her declaration. Qin Tian noticed the river had risen after the downpour. He seemed relieved that he hadn't set up camp too close to the water's edge. Qin Tian realized with dismay that his carefully constructed stone pond for raising rations had flooded. He waded into the water, retrieving a large submerged basket. He lifted the basket, water splashing around him as he wondered what happened. Qin Tian was relieved to find a cage. With all his clothes being washed, he decided to use the cage as a temporary cover-up. Qin Tian, realizing the precarious state of their clothes, decides he needs to find nettle to make new ones. And fast. Night falls on the island. The pink-haired girl worriedly asked if the boars would return. The dark-haired man reassured her, explaining they'd hear the boars coming, and could easily avoid them. By the firelight, Qin Tian offered to take the first watch, noting their clothes were still damp. Ye Lin, agreeing, reminded him to wake her later for her shift. After last night's events, the pink-haired girl felt uneasy about their camp. He shared her anxiety, constantly looking over his shoulder, fearing a boar attack. Qin Tian strained, pulling back on his makeshift bow, the wood creaking ominously. He realized with a grimace that island life wasn't as easy as he'd thought, even after completing the pottery. Determined, he focused on his task, knowing a recurve bow was key to their survival on the island. He carefully twisted the two pieces of the bow, securing the rope tightly. He added another piece to the bow, reinforcing it with twine. He cleverly used hareskin on the handle for better grip. Someone is meticulously pounding a piece of twine against a rock, sparks flying. A helpful tip appears. A bow's power lies in its handle, not a flexible string. It's then suggested that boar tendons would make a much stronger bowstring than ordinary twine. Someone's working with a dried-out tendon, realizing it's lost its elasticity. The dark-haired guy bites down on the tendon, looking determined. He's instructed to separate the strands, weave them with twine to create a bowstring. Qin Tian adjusted the strap across his bare chest, seemingly preparing for something. Suddenly, a bow and arrow materialized, aimed with intense focus. The scene shifts to a close-up, hinting at imminent action. Qin Tian tested his newly crafted bow, a look of satisfaction on his face as it held strong. He realized he still needed arrows. Qin Tian learns that Abelia biflora wood is ideal for arrow making. He carefully whittles a piece of regular wood with his knife, deciding it will do for now. Damp branches are being roasted over a fire to make lighter, more effective arrows for improved range. It seems there are two ways to craft arrows. The first involves carefully burning one end of a shaft in a bonfire, and then sharpening the charred tip. Qin Tian seems intensely focused as he contemplates the task. Qin Tian examined a sharpened stone arrowhead. He explained that while this method worked, it was labor-intensive. He decided to test 3 stone-tipped arrows against the charcoal ones. If their power was comparable, they'd stick with the easier charcoal method. Someone carefully ties a sharp stone to a wooden shaft. Deciding to use a leaf as fletching, Qin Tian, relieved, takes a deep breath after seemingly completing a challenging task. Qin Tian, having crafted a bamboo bow and arrows, earned himself a hefty 2,000 points, a notification pinging to confirm his success. A notification sound rings out in the quiet night, startling the stillness under the crescent moon. Qin Tian excitedly realized he'd reached 11,000 points. He wondered if that was enough to unlock a new ability. He began to consider his options, pondering which ability he could redeem. Qin Tian, deep in thought, recalled a childhood moment of choice as he considered 2 redeemable abilities. The blonde man beside him described the swift cheetah ability, a burst of speed, perfect for survival but draining. Qin Tian countered, a cunning glint in his eyes, pointing out that speed is useless against relentless pursuers like the boar they'd encountered, who track by scent and never give up. Qin Tian realized he could gain immense strength, like a bull's. He imagined punching a boar, confident this new power would let him defend himself. He practices his punch. Qin Tian worriedly realized his fighting skills were useless against a whole herd of wild boars. He sighed in relief, now armed with a new bamboo bow. Qin Tian, strategizing, decided speed was his best asset and selected Swift Cheetah. Qin Tian, surrounded by swirling energy, just unlocked a new power, and a spectral wolf image materialized behind him. A mysterious transformation begins, crackling with energy. around a figure in a leafy skirt. Qin Tian's body is enveloped in swirling light. He grimaces in what appears to be pain as the changes intensify. Qin Tian groaned as a strange energy surged through him. He wondered if it was an illusion, noticing his body felt remarkably stronger. He let out a relieved sigh, realizing something significant had changed within him. Qin Tian woke up feeling completely rejuvenated, like he'd had the best sleep in ages. The next day, someone instructed him to toss out some clods and find a spot. Wild boars had trashed the campsite. After a good night's sleep, Qin Tian and Yelin were ready to tackle the mess. Yelin seemed eager to start, while Qin Tian looked determined. They began stacking up broken pottery pieces. Qin Tian and Yelin quickly tidied up their camp after some sort of damage. Disaster struck. Rampaging boars trashed the camp, smashing most of Qin Tian and Yelin's carefully crafted pottery, forcing them to start the painstaking firing process all over again. Qin Tian and Yelin's pottery skills were noticeably better thanks to their past experience. He carefully examined a newly crafted pot, while she proudly wiped sweat from her brow. Qin Tian and Yelin spent 2 days making enough pottery to last them a while. A few days after a rainy night, Qin Tian finally got around to working on his handmade bow and arrow. He seemed focused, practicing his aim. Thanks to a mysterious system, Qin Tian crafted a bamboo bow, despite being a complete novice with archery. He aimed and fired, but his accuracy was questionable, leaving Yelin speechless. It seems his first attempt wasn't quite a bullseye. Qin Tian missed the target again, much to his frustration. After a day of dedicated practice, his aim significantly improved. An arrow thuds into a target, hitting close to the bullseye. Although his archery skills aren't perfect, he's proficient enough to take down large game. The next morning arrives. Qin Tian trudged through surprisingly persistent mud, puzzling over why the ground was still so wet days after the rain. He wondered aloud if the thick canopy above was preventing the sun from drying the earth. Qin Tian, looking concerned, leaned against a large tree, seemingly lost in thought. Qin Tian, amidst lush tropical foliage, spots something intriguing and wonders aloud if they are tadpoles. Someone was utterly perplexed by tadpoles swimming in a plant high up in a tree. The plant seemed to hold water, creating a surprising little habitat. Someone observed tadpoles thriving, noting their growing legs and imminent transformation into frogs. Qin Tian, with a thoughtful look, deduced that the sheer number of tadpoles meant they hatched there naturally. Qin Tian, looking thoughtful, mused that nothing was too strange in this world. He was amazed to find tadpoles growing on a tree in a bamboo forest. Cautiously, Qin Tian returned to the bamboo forest, knife in hand, remembering his previous boar encounter and determined to stay near the edge this time. After a recent rainfall, tons of bamboo shoots sprung up, a rare sight at the forest's edge. Suddenly, a loud "bawk" startled someone nearby. Qin Tian, gripping his makeshift bow, looked determined. Qin Tian, alert and hopeful, wondered if the sound he heard was a pheasant. Qin Tian realized something, a look of understanding crossing his face. He admired a beautiful, unfamiliar pheasant, captivated by its vibrant plumage. Qin Tian stealthily stalked his prey through the dense bamboo. 2 vibrant pheasants, oblivious to the danger, pecked at the ground. He was ready to strike. Qin Tian readies his makeshift bow and arrow with a determined grin, promising chicken soup for dinner. With a creak, the makeshift bow bent taut in. Qin Tian's grip aimed towards an unseen target in the lush forest. An arrow whizzed past a pheasant, narrowly missing it. Qin Tian realized hitting moving targets is much harder than stationary ones. He realized the pheasants weren't easily scared, giving him another shot. Determined, he vowed to return with a prize this time. Hidden amongst the dense bamboo, 2 birds noticed something unsettling. An arrow zipped past, narrowly, missing them. 3 birds cautiously pecked at the ground near bamboo shoots, unaware of a discarded arrow nearby. A sudden sound alerted them. Qin Tian, seemingly nervous, thought about getting closer to someone. He seemed hesitant, touching his face. Qin Tian carefully aimed his makeshift bow and arrow at a group of birds. Qin Tian, with focused determination, aimed his bow and arrow, finding the perfect distance for his shot. A pheasant cried out as it was struck by something mid-flight. The unseen hunter earned 200 points for the successful shot. Qin Tian, with a triumphant grin, pumps his fist, finally achieving something he's been working towards. Qin Tian lunged forward. A spear pierced through the air, striking a bird mid-flight. A bird is stabbed mid-flight. It lets out a startled squawk. The dark-haired young man seems distressed, realizing he's out of arrows. Qin Tian reassured someone that 3 pheasants were plenty of food. He then appeared in a bamboo forest. Qin Tian successfully hunted a bird with his bow and arrow. 2 other birds looked startled by the sudden kill. Another bird squawked in alarm, seemingly noticing the downed bird. Qin Tian skillfully shot down 2 pheasants with his arrows. He scoffed at the bird's slow reaction time. Over a crackling fire, someone asked if everyone was ready as they reached for the lid of a large cooking pot. The pink-haired pink-haired girl excitedly commented on the delicious aroma coming from the steaming pot. Qin Tian served a portion of the fragrant food. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, takes a delicate spoonful of something, a contented expression on her face. The pink-haired girl, presumably Ye Lin, held a bowl of something warm. Her eyes widened, fixated on the contents, a bead of sweat trickling down her cheek as she realized it was chicken soup. Ye Lin savored the delicious chicken soup, surrounded by clucking birds in a bamboo grove. She looked blissful, her eyes closed in contentment, enjoying the peaceful moment. She reached for a piece of food, her expression filled with pure delight. The pink-haired girl savored the delicious meal, praising the lingering taste of chicken and the fresh aroma of bamboo shoots. Overwhelmed with joy, she declared the experience as exhilarating as running through a bamboo forest after the rain. Qin Tian savored a bowl of pheasant stew, noting its mild flavor due to the pheasant's lean nature. He realized the tang of bamboo shoots added a delightful kick to the otherwise simple dish. The unexpected flavor combination of the dish amazed them. The pink-haired girl thoughtfully added it needed salt. Qin Tian offered Ye Lin a bowl, seemingly of chicken soup. With sparkling eyes and a hopeful smile, she wondered aloud if adding salt would enhance the flavor. Qin Tian listened intently, a hint of curiosity in his expression. Ye Lin seemed delighted with the food Qin Tian offered her. He mused that with a pinch of salt, the dish would be truly mind-blowing. He quickly remembered they were stranded on a desert island. Salt was a luxury they couldn't afford. He wistfully imagined how much better their meal would be with some seasoning. Ye Lin stirs something in a bowl, explaining to Qin Tian that it will not only improve the taste but also add essential nutrients. Qin Tian can't believe he didn't think of making salt from seawater, expressing his disbelief. Qin Tian, a bit exasperated, told Ye Lin to stop chattering and that they'd go to the beach to make salt the next day. 2 weeks into their island exile, Qin Tian realized they were dangerously low on sodium. He worried about the serious health risks if they didn't find a solution soon. Ye Lin, with a bright smile and a spoon in hand, cheerfully agreed. Qin Tian and Ye Lin share a quiet moment, enjoying a meal together in the wilderness. He notices a pheasant feather and has a resourceful idea for making arrow fletching. Qin Tian and Ye Lin trekked through the tropical foliage, a palpable tension hanging in the air. He carried a bowl, perhaps foraging while she trailed behind, clutching a long stick, her expression distant. The beautiful island scenery seemed almost at odds with the quiet unease between them. Ocean waves gently lapped the shore. Someone realized boiling seawater would take a while. They suggested looking for other supplies in the meantime. Qin Tian, fiddling with his makeshift bow, told Ye Lin she could go for a walk if she was bored. Concerned, she asked what he planned to do. Qin Tian, holding some materials, had a brilliant idea. Build a sundial to keep track of time on the island. Ye Lin, intrigued, eagerly offered her assistance. Someone worried about lacking special tools for precise angles. Ye Lin spreads out some woven material. Qin Tian, with a sly grin, suggests using twine as a tool, leaving Ye Lin puzzled about how to make it. Qin Tian carefully carved a square from a pile of mud using a dagger, while someone else's hands gently rested nearby. Someone carefully marked the center of a mud board by drawing a diagonal line across it. Next, they prepared to draw something else on the newly marked board. He carefully draws a circle on a mud board, creating a makeshift sundial. He explains there are 3 types of sundials: equatorial, horizontal, and vertical, each distinguished by its angle. He looks thoughtful, about to continue his explanation. Qin Tian meticulously adjusted a small device, seemingly crafting a makeshift tool. A horizontal sundial and then a vertical sundial were shown, indicating a focus on timekeeping. The pink-haired girl explained how to set up 3 sundials, pointing her finger upwards for emphasis. Qin Tian confirms something with a satisfied expression. Ye Lin gestures while explaining the unique properties of an equatorial sundial. A detailed illustration of the sundial highlights its equal angles for each time interval. Someone explains how to precisely fold a rope into 6 equal sections using a visual guide. Lacking a protractor, someone improvises a makeshift sundial. A sundial is shown, with an explanation that it's different from regular clocks, running from 0 to 24. It's also revealed that the dial has time markings on both sides, with the back displaying the opposite time to the front, adding a layer of complexity. The pink-haired girl wondered about the sun's movement and the tropics. A diagram showed a sundial with the sun's positions in different seasons. He explained how a sundial works, noting the shadow's position changes with the solar declination. Ye Lin, the pink-haired girl, wondered about the pedestal of the sundial. Qin Tian, focused on assembling the sundial, realized a crucial detail. Its accuracy depends on their latitude, which they don't know on this deserted island. Ye Lin wondered if Qin Tian was planning to build a sextant. He seemed confused, explaining how a sextant works to find location, but wondering why he'd need one if he already knows the time. Ye Lin gestured towards something, catching Qin Tian's attention. He mused about a specific time they could easily figure out. The pink-haired girl excitedly declared he meant noon. He seemed to consider her suggestion. Qin Tian, gesturing, explained to Ye Lin how to use the sun's shadow at noon to calculate an angle. He then asked her to keep an eye on things while he checked on the seawater. Qin Tian, gesturing with a raised finger, instructed Ye Lin to proceed, promising to alert her when the bamboo stick's shadow neared its base. Qin Tian carefully checked the boiling salt, worried it might burn despite being slightly damp. Qin Tian, holding something, figured it'd be ready after a few minutes of sun drying. Someone scrapes the last bits of coarse salt from a pot, realizing a pot of seawater yields about 200 grams, enough for half a month, but it seems insufficient. Qin Tian tasted something, his expression a mix of disgust and contemplation. He realized it was bitter, sandy, and needed more refining. He worriedly noted that the refining process might reduce the final amount. Qin Tian, seemingly holding some kind of plant, realized they had time to boil more water before afternoon. Qin Tian, holding a large clay pot, realized they could gather a substantial amount of salt, enough to last them over a month even, after refining it. Ye Lin, with a bright smile, called Qin Tian over to see something. Qin Tian, busy tending a small fire, looks back at her curiously. It seems Ye Lin had built a sundial. Qin Tian looked expectantly at Ye Lin. The pink-haired girl, holding something green, seemed surprised by his question. Are you done? Qin Tian noticed their creation was unstable and decided to reinforce it with another bamboo stick, while Yucky, Ye Lin watched. Someone scoops a grainy substance from a green bamboo container with a green spoon, and the caption warns that this coarse salt isn't recommended for consumption. Qin Tian warned Ye Lin that the water wasn't safe to drink due to impurities. He pointed out the sand and other potentially harmful substances present in it. The pink-haired girl listened carefully, holding a container. They sat on a sunny beach near a small smoking fire they had built. Qin Tian and Ye Lin, realizing their sundial base had dried, hurried back to camp with a plan. They were determined to make their collected sea salt edible. It turned out to be more of a rinsing process than actual refinement. Someone carefully poured water through a filter. They dissolved the salt in clean water, filtered out impurities, and reboiled it until it dried to get cleaner salt. On a tropical island, Qin Tian tasted something from a large leaf, while Ye Lin watched with wide, curious eyes, holding another leaf filled with an unknown substance. It seems Qin Tian is meticulously filtering something, likely salt, to purify it for their survival. Qin Tian and Ye Lin cleverly crafted a water filter. Water poured into a makeshift container. Pebbles formed the first layer. River sand formed the next layer of the filter. Fine sand made the final filtration layer, promising cleaner water. A diagram demonstrated how to construct a simple water filter using a bamboo tube, cloth, charcoal, sand, and pebbles. Looking at the finished filters, the dark-haired guy mused that activated charcoal would be even better. Qin Tian carefully watched the water filter he'd built, explaining that activated carbon purifies salt water much better than regular charcoal. Hours of work filtering salt water, and Qin Tian looks frustrated, holding a pot with just a meager amount collected. He clicks his tongue in annoyance. It's 6 p.m. on the island. Some sort of rudimentary sundial and construction materials lie scattered on the grassy ground. Ye Lin savors a bowl of chicken soup, utterly delighted by its deliciousness. Pink-haired Ye Lin looms large, her flowing hair framing the scene. Qin Tian, with his dark hair and slight smile, appears, explaining the importance of salt, sauce, and color in Chinese cooking. He emphasizes how crucial salt is to any dish. Qin Tian savored a spoonful of chicken soup, noting how much a little salt improved the flavor. Ye Lin's reaction, however, was pure, sparkling delight. Qin Tian watched her, a hint of amusement in his expression. Ye Lin savored something from a bowl with a dreamy expression, little sparkles around her, while Qin Tian seemed amused but also a little overwhelmed by her reaction. He playfully told her she was overreacting. Qin Tian wondered aloud how long they'd been stranded. Ye Lin, carrying a bowl, informed him it had been 22 days. He realized with a start that it was almost a month. Ye Lin, with a curious glint in her eye, asked Qin Tian what kind of boat he planned to build. Qin Tian, determined, declared they needed a fishing boat to escape the island. But first, he added, they had to focus on improving their current living conditions. Qin Tian realized building a boat was a long-term project. He decided they needed to prioritize comfort and energy conservation on the island. His next big idea: upgrading their flimsy shelter to a sturdier structure, like a bamboo hut or a wooden house. This would provide a safe haven from any wild animal encounters. The pink-haired girl, Ye Lin, excitedly pointed towards something, urging Qin Tian to move their campsite. It seems they needed a change of scenery, and fast. Qin Tian, lost in thought, touched his chin. He realized that Ye Lin's words about the leaky shed from that stormy night had really struck a chord. He knew they needed to find a way to make their shelter more comfortable. Under the crescent moon, Ye Lin, the pink-haired girl, looked surprised, questioning a proposed campsite move. Qin Tian, the black-haired young man, explained that while their current spot was roomy, the dense trees made them vulnerable to wild animals. He added that initially they'd lack time to find a better spot, but now that food and water were secured, they could relocate. Someone decided it was time to upgrade their living situation, since they had plenty of time on their hands. 4 days passed quickly on the island. Qin Tian, navigating the dense forest, seemed to contemplate a difficult decision about relocating their camp. He touched a tree thoughtfully, a determined yet troubled expression on his face. After 4 days of fruitless searching, Qin Tian was starting to lose hope. Suddenly he noticed a brighter light through the dense trees. He reached out, curious and hopeful. Could this be the edge of the forest he'd been looking for? Qin Tian approached the edge of the forest. He shielded his eyes, peering into the dense trees. With a determined look, he wondered what awaited him beyond the woods. Qin Tian felt a thrill of excitement. He looked intently, his eyes wide. Qin Tian seemed surprised, uttering "this," as if he'd just seen something unbelievable. Suddenly, he spotted a meadow through the trees. He pushed through the branches, emerging into the clearing. The wind rustled the leaves around him. Qin Tian, looking down from a small cliff, spotted a perfect meadow for their camp, open, with a great view, and safely separated from the surrounding woods. A dark cave mouth is revealed in the lush green foliage, promising potential shelter. Qin Tian cautiously approached a cave, pulling back his makeshift bow, worried about potential wild animals inside. Unable to see into a dark cave, the resourceful guy decided to shoot an arrow inside. He pulled back his bowstring, his expression focused. Twang! The arrow flew, echoing in the cave's depths. Qin Tian fired an arrow into the darkness of a cave. It hit stone, and silence followed, leaving him to assume it was empty. The next scene showed complete darkness. Qin Tian, exploring the island, discovered a spacious cave and thought it might make a good shelter if it was dry. Qin Tian heard a sudden crack and looked puzzled. Something definitely caught his attention. Inside a dark cave, someone noticed scattered animal bones. A chilling realization dawned. This cave wasn't empty. This cave already had an inhabitant. Surrounded by scattered bones, he realized the creature that left them must be dangerous. A sudden crack underfoot made him freeze. Something startling clearly happened off-panel. Qin Tian reacted with surprise as something whizzed past him. In the pouring rain, a fierce creature with glowing red eyes lunged forward. Swift Cheetah was activated, indicated by motion lines and a burst of energy. A whizzing sound filled the air as something moved at incredible speed. Qin Tian, crouched low, gripped his makeshift bow, blue energy crackling around it, cursing under his breath. He seemed frustrated and determined. Qin Tian, with a look of surprise, realizes he's encountered a giant panda. Qin Tian felt a strange vibe from the panda. He quickly spun around, his bow at the ready. Qin Tian sprints through the jungle. He kicks off a tree with blurring speed. Someone tells him to calm down and have some bamboo. Qin Tian tossed something towards a menacing panda, unsure if it would even take the bait. A large panda sniffed a small green cylinder curiously. Someone observed the creature's interest in the object. With glowing red eyes, the creature crushed the cylinder in its powerful jaws. A panda chomped down on some bamboo, looking surprised. Qin Tian, startled by a sudden howl, wondered what was going on. Qin Tian stared, bewildered, at the strange creature before him. This wasn't a normal panda.